The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Julian Pierce's corner office, but Brielle Thompson felt cold all over. Her hands trembled in her lap as she sat in the leather chair across from his massive desk. The city skyline stretched out behind him, making him look even more powerful and intimidating than usual. "I need to know the truth, Brielle," Julian said, his voice measured but firm. His blue eyes, usually warm when he looked at her, were unreadable now. "Why does your daughter call me Daddy?" Brielle's breath caught in her throat. This was the conversation she'd been dreading for weeks, ever since that day at the aquarium when Hope had cried out for him using that word. That single word that had changed everything between them. She started, her voice barely above a whisper. She clutched the strap of her worn purse, acutely aware of how out of place she looked in this gleaming office building. Her simple red dress, the nicest thing she owned, felt shabby compared to the expensive surroundings. Julian leaned forward, his expensive suit jacket pulling tight across his broad shoulders. At 38, he was one of the youngest billionaire CEOs in the country, having built his tech company from nothing. Every magazine called him brilliant, ruthless, untouchable. But right now, sitting across from her, he just looked like a man who needed answers. "She's 4 years old," Julian continued, his jaw tight. "She barely knows me. We've spent maybe a dozen afternoons together over the past 3 months. Yet every time I see her, she runs to me calling me Daddy. Every single time." He paused, and Brielle saw something flicker in his eyes. Confusion? "Other parents are talking. My board members are asking questions. I need to understand what's happening here." Brielle felt tears burning behind her eyes. She'd known this moment would come. She'd known that eventually Julian would demand an explanation for why her daughter had latched onto him with such fierce, desperate affection. Why Hope's little face lit up like Christmas morning every time she saw him. Why she drew pictures of him at daycare and called them "my family." "I'm so sorry," Brielle whispered, her voice breaking. "I never meant for this to happen. I never encouraged it. I swear to you I never." "I'm not accusing you of anything," Julian interrupted, but his tone was still guarded. "I just need to understand. Is this some kind of scheme? Are you trying to trap me into something? Because if you are..." "No." The word came out sharp and hurt. Brielle's head snapped up, and she met his eyes directly for the first time since sitting down. "I would never. I'm not that kind of person." "Then explain it to me." Julian sat back, crossing his arms. "Make me understand why a child I barely know has decided I'm her father." Brielle closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the past 2 years pressing down on her chest. She'd worked so hard to survive, to keep moving forward, to be strong for Hope. She'd built walls around her heart and focused only on getting through each day. But now those walls were crumbling, and she had to face the painful truth she'd been avoiding. "It's complicated," she finally said. "I have time." Brielle looked at him, this powerful man who'd somehow stumbled into her broken life 3 months ago. Julian Pierce, who could buy anything he wanted, who commanded respect with a single glance, who had the world at his fingertips. And yet here he was, demanding to know why her daughter loved him. "To explain it," Brielle said slowly, "I need to tell you everything. About my husband. About how he died. About what Hope has been missing her entire life." She took a shaky breath. "About why you're the first man who's ever made her feel safe." Julian's expression softened slightly. "Your husband? Trevor?" Brielle whispered the name she rarely spoke aloud anymore. "He died 2 years ago." Hope was born 3 months after the funeral. Something shifted in Julian's face. The hardness melted away, replaced by something that looked like understanding or perhaps regret. "Brielle, I didn't know." "How could you?" She gave a sad smile. "I don't talk about it. I can't. It's too painful. But if you want to know why Hope calls you Daddy, you need to know about the father she never got to meet." The office fell silent except for the distant hum of traffic far below. Brielle's heart hammered in her chest. This was it. She was about to lay bare the most painful chapter of her life to a man who was practically a stranger. A man who'd shown them inexplicable kindness over the past few months. A man her daughter loved with pure, uncomplicated faith. A man who scared Brielle because he made her feel things she'd sworn she'd never feel again. "Start at the beginning," Julian said quietly. His voice had changed, gone gentle. "Tell me everything. But before I continue, let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. How many single mothers do you see struggling silently every day, working themselves to exhaustion, too proud to ask for help even when they desperately need it? If this story touches your heart, if you want to see how Brielle's courage changes everything, Please hit that subscribe button and comment below with your thoughts. Your support helps share stories that matter. Brielle took a deep breath, gathering her courage. To explain why Hope called Julian Daddy, she'd have to go back to the beginning. Back to before the pain, before the loss, before she became a widow at 24 years old. 3 months ago, she began, my whole world was falling apart. I was working 2 jobs, barely sleeping, barely eating. I was drowning in bills and grief and exhaustion. And then one morning, outside a coffee shop on 5th Street, my daughter dropped her favorite toy bunny. It rolled right into your path. Julian's eyes flickered with recognition. I remember. You do. Of course I do. Julian's voice was softer now. How could I forget? You were rushing somewhere, juggling bags and holding her hand. She was wearing that yellow dress with the sunflowers. She dropped the bunny, and you didn't even notice because you were trying to check your phone and watch her and carry everything at once. Brielle felt her throat tighten. He'd noticed so much in that brief encounter. You picked it up. You didn't just hand it back. You crouched down to her level and gave it to her directly. You spoke to her like she mattered. Like she was a real person, not just some kid in your way. She thanked me very politely, Julian said, and Brielle saw the ghost of a smile on his face. She said, "Thank you, nice man." It was. He paused. It was the sweetest thing I'd heard in a very long time. She talked about you for days after that, Brielle admitted. She said you had kind eyes. She asked if we'd see you again. I told her probably not, that you were just a stranger being nice. I thought that was the end of it. But it wasn't. No, Brielle agreed. Because a week later you showed up at Little Sunshine Daycare where I work. You said you were considering enrolling your nephew there. You asked for a tour. Julian's jaw tightened slightly. I lied. I don't have a nephew. The admission hung in the air between them. Brielle had suspected as much, but hearing him confirm it sent her heart racing. Why? She asked. Why did you come looking for us? Julian was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because I saw something in that little girl's eyes. Something I recognized. A kind of loneliness that shouldn't exist in someone so young. He looked at Brielle directly. And because I saw the same thing in yours. Brielle's breath caught. She hadn't expected such raw honesty. I came back to the daycare because I couldn't stop thinking about her smile, Julian continued. About how genuine it was. How pure. In my world, everyone wants something. Everyone has an angle. But she just smiled at me because I was kind to her. That's all it took. Basic human decency, and she lit up like I'd given her the world. You don't know what that meant to us, Brielle said quietly. To her. I'm starting to understand. Julian rubbed his face tiredly. But I still need to know why she calls me Daddy. Help me understand, Brielle. Please. Brielle nodded slowly. To answer his question, she'd have to take him back. Back to 3 months ago, to 2 years ago, to the moment everything changed. She'd have to tell him about Trevor, about loss, about a little girl who'd never known her father's love. About why Julian's simple kindness had meant everything. The day we met you outside that coffee shop, Brielle began, her voice steadier now, was the 2-year anniversary of my husband's death. I was barely holding it together. I was late for my second job, Hope was cranky because I'd forgotten to pack her snack, and I was crying inside but trying not to show it. And then you appeared, this stranger who picked up her bunny and smiled at her like she mattered. Like we mattered. Julian's expression shifted, understanding beginning to dawn in his eyes. You asked me if everything was okay, Brielle continued. Do you remember that? Yes. No one had asked me that in 2 years. Not once. Everyone assumed I was fine because I showed up to work and took care of my daughter and kept going. But you, a complete stranger, looked at me and saw that I was drowning. And you asked. What did you say? Brielle smiled sadly. I lied. I said I was fine. And you knew I was lying, but you didn't push. You just nodded and told Hope to have a good day. It was such a small thing. Such a tiny moment in your life. But for us, it was the first time in months that someone had seen us. Really seen us. She watched Julian process this information, saw the moment understanding clicked into place. But she wasn't done. To truly explain why Hope called him Daddy, she needed to tell him the whole story. She needed to make him understand the depth of their loneliness, and how his kindness had been a lifeline they hadn't known they needed. The story was just beginning, and the truth was more complicated than Julian could ever imagine. 3 months earlier, Brielle had woken up to the harsh buzz of her alarm at 5:30 in the morning, just like every other day. The anniversary of Trevor's death loomed over her like a storm cloud, but she couldn't afford to acknowledge it. She had bills to pay, a daughter to feed, and 2 jobs that kept her moving from dawn until late into the night. Hope was still sleeping in the small bedroom of their tiny apartment, her dark curls spread across the pillow that was getting too flat. Brielle stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her daughter breathe. 4 years old. Trevor had never gotten to meet her, never gotten to see those beautiful brown eyes that were so much like his, never heard her laugh or watched her discover the world. "I'm trying," Brielle whispered to the memory of her husband. "I'm trying so hard. But I'm so tired, Trevor. I'm so tired." There was no answer, of course. There never was. Just silence and the weight of responsibilities that never seemed to get lighter. Brielle moved through her morning routine like a ghost. Shower, coffee, pack Hope's lunch, lay out her own work clothes. The red dress was clean at least. It was her favorite, one of the few nice things she'd kept from her old life before everything fell apart. Before the accident that took Trevor, before the medical bills that swallowed their savings, before she learned what it meant to truly struggle. By 7 o'clock, Hope was awake and grumpy about getting dressed. Brielle coaxed her into her yellow sundress with the sunflowers, the one her grandmother had sent for her birthday. It was getting too small, but Brielle couldn't afford new clothes yet. Maybe next month if she picked up extra hours at the cleaning company. "Mommy, can we get pancakes?" Hope asked as Brielle braided her hair. "Not today, baby. We need to save our money." "But I'm hungry." "I know, sweetheart. I packed you a good lunch. You'll have breakfast at daycare, remember?" Hope's lower lip trembled and Brielle felt her heart crack a little more. Her daughter shouldn't have to understand about saving money, about going without, about why they couldn't have the small treats other kids took for granted. But this was their reality. "Tell you what," Brielle said, forcing brightness into her voice. "If you're good all day, we'll make cookies tonight. The chocolate chip ones you love." Hope's face lit up, and Brielle made a mental note to check if they had enough flour and sugar. They'd make it work somehow. They always did. The bus ride to Little Sunshine Daycare took 40 minutes. Brielle held Hope's hand the whole way, watching the city wake up around them. Professionals in expensive suits rushed to offices. Parents dropped off kids in nice cars. Everyone seemed to have their lives together except her. At the daycare, Brielle signed Hope in and kissed her goodbye. "I'll pick you up at 5:30, okay?" "Okay, Mommy." Hope hugged her tight. "I love you. I love you too, baby. So much." Then Brielle was off to her teaching shift at a different daycare across town. She worked with the infant room, changing diapers and preparing bottles and soothing crying babies. The work was hard and the pay was terrible, but she was grateful to have it. She'd been lucky to find 2 daycare jobs that allowed her to bring Hope with her sometimes. Her lunch break was 15 minutes, which she spent in the break room eating the sandwich she'd packed and checking her bank account on her phone. The numbers made her stomach hurt. Rent was due in 5 days and she was short. Again. She'd have to ask her landlord for an extension. Again. By 3 o'clock, she was back at Little Sunshine to finish her shift there. The afternoon was chaos as it always was. 24-year-olds hyped up on goldfish crackers and juice boxes, all needing attention at once. Brielle read stories, mediated disputes over toys, wiped noses and kept everyone safe. Hope played happily with the other children, and Brielle watched her whenever she could. Her daughter was resilient, bright, full of life despite everything they'd been through. She deserved better than this constant struggle. She deserved a father who was alive, a home that wasn't falling apart, a mother who wasn't exhausted all the time. At 5:15, Brielle's supervisor called her into the office. "Brielle, we need to talk about your hours," Mrs. Patterson said, not unkindly. Brielle's heart sank. "Is there a problem?" "Budget cuts. I'm sorry. We're going to have to reduce everyone's hours starting next month. You'll be down to 30 hours a week instead of 40. 10 hours. 10 hours of pay she desperately needed." Brielle felt the room spin for a moment. "I understand," she managed to say, because what else could she say? At least she still had a job at all. "I'm really sorry," Mrs. Patterson said. "I know things have been hard for you." Brielle nodded mutely and left the office. She collected Hope and their things, her mind already racing through numbers. How would she make up that lost income? Could she pick up more cleaning shifts? Could she find another part-time job somewhere? They were waiting at the bus stop when Hope announced she needed to use the bathroom. "Can you hold it, baby? The bus will be here in 5 minutes." "I really need to go, Mommy." Brielle looked around. There was a coffee shop half a block away. It was nicer than anywhere they usually went, but desperate times called for desperate measures. "Come on quick." They hurried to the coffee shop, and Brielle took Hope to the bathroom. While Hope was washing her hands, Brielle caught sight of herself in the mirror. Dark circles under her eyes. Her red dress wrinkled from a long day. Hair escaping from her ponytail. She looked exhausted and defeated and so much older than her 26 years. "You're doing your best," she told her reflection. But her best never seemed good enough. When they came out of the bathroom, Hope wanted to look at the pastries in the display case. Brielle let her look, even though she couldn't afford to buy anything. "They're so pretty, Mommy." "They are, aren't they? Can we get one?" "Not today, sweet girl. Maybe another time." Hope accepted this with the resigned patience of a child who'd heard, "not today," too many times. She clutched her stuffed bunny, Mr. Hops, the one toy that went everywhere with her. It had been a gift from Trevor's mother, one of the few things Brielle had from his family. They left the coffee shop, and Brielle was juggling her work bag, Hope's daycare bag, and trying to check her phone for the bus schedule when it happened. Hope's grip on Mr. Hops loosened, and the bunny tumbled to the sidewalk, rolling right into the path of a man in an expensive charcoal suit. The man stopped, bent down, and picked up the bunny before Brielle even realized it had fallen. "Excuse me," he said, his voice pleasant. "I think someone dropped this." He crouched down to Hope's level and Brielle finally got a good look at him. Tall, broad-shouldered, probably in his late 30s. Dark hair just starting to gray at the temples. Blue eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He was holding Mr. Hops out to Hope with both hands, like it was something precious. "Thank you, nice man," Hope said, taking the bunny and hugging it tight. "You're very welcome," the man replied. "What's your bunny's name?" "Mr. Hops." "That's an excellent name." The man stood up and looked at Brielle. His expression shifted, became more serious. "Are you okay? You look like you might need to sit down." The concern in his voice caught Brielle off guard. She blinked, suddenly aware that she probably did look terrible. The long day, the bad news about her hours, the weight of the anniversary, it was all written across her face. "I'm fine," she lied automatically. "Just a long day. Thank you for getting the bunny." The man nodded, but his eyes said he didn't believe her. He didn't push though. Instead he smiled down at Hope again. "You take good care of Mr. Hops, okay?" "I will," Hope promised solemnly. The man started to walk away, then paused and turned back. "I hope your day gets better," he said to Brielle. There was genuine kindness in his voice, not pity. Just simple human compassion. "Thank you," Brielle managed to say. "Have a good evening." They watched him walk away, disappearing into the late afternoon crowd. Hope tugged on Brielle's hand. "He had nice eyes, Mommy." "He did, sweetheart. He was very kind to help us. Will we see him again?" "Probably not, baby. That's just how life works sometimes. But we can remember his kindness." Hope seemed satisfied with that answer, and they hurried to catch their bus. During the ride home, while Hope dozed against her shoulder, Brielle thought about the stranger with the kind eyes. It had been such a small thing, picking up a dropped toy, but it had felt significant somehow. Like a moment of light in an otherwise dark day. She wondered who he was, what his life was like. He'd been wearing an expensive suit, carrying a leather briefcase. Probably worked in one of the big office buildings downtown. Probably had a nice house, a comfortable life, no idea what it was like to count pennies and wonder how you'd make rent. But he'd been kind. That mattered. In a world that often felt cruel and indifferent, small kindnesses counted for something. When they got home, Brielle made spaghetti for dinner because it was cheap and filling. Hope chattered about her day at daycare while they ate. Who she played with, what they learned, the funny thing another kid said. Brielle listened and responded, but part of her mind was still calculating numbers, trying to figure out how to make up for the hours she was losing. After dinner they made chocolate chip cookies as promised. Hope stood on a chair at the counter, helping measure ingredients and stir the dough. Her laughter filled their small kitchen, and for a few minutes, Brielle could forget about money troubles and exhaustion and everything else. "You're getting so big," Brielle said, ruffling Hope's curls. "Soon you'll be able to reach the counter without a chair." "Will I be tall like Daddy?" The question hit Brielle like a punch. Hope rarely mentioned Trevor, mostly because she had no memory of him. But sometimes out of nowhere she'd ask about her father. "Yes," Brielle said softly. "Your daddy was very tall. And he would have loved making cookies with you. I wish I could remember him." "I know, baby. I wish that too." They finished the cookies in silence, and Brielle reflected on how unfair life could be. Trevor should be here. He should be the one helping Hope measure flour and stealing chocolate chips. He should be tucking her in at night and reading her stories. Instead, it was just Brielle doing her best but knowing it would never be enough. That night, after Hope was asleep, Brielle sat on the couch with Trevor's photo album. She did this sometimes on bad days, torturing herself with memories of what used to be. Trevor's smile, young and full of life. Their wedding day, both of them so happy and naive, thinking they had forever ahead of them. She touched his face through the plastic covering. "I met someone today," she whispered. "Just a stranger who helped us. But he was kind, Trevor. So kind. And for a moment I remembered what it felt like to have someone notice us. To have someone care even a little bit." The photo offered no comfort, no answers. Just a frozen moment from a life that no longer existed. Brielle closed the album and went to bed, where she lay awake for a long time, thinking about kind eyes and lost opportunities and the weight of tomorrow. A week later everything changed. Brielle was at work at Little Sunshine Daycare when the front desk called her to the lobby. "There's someone here asking for a tour," the receptionist said. "Can you show him around?" Brielle wiped finger paint off her hands and headed to the front. She was expecting a young parent, maybe a pregnant woman looking at options for the future. Instead she found the man from the coffee shop. The one who'd picked up Mr. Hops. He was wearing another expensive suit, navy this time, and he looked just as polished and put together as before. Their eyes met and Brielle saw recognition flare in his. "Hello again," he said with a warm smile. "Hi." Brielle's heart was beating too fast. What were the odds? What was he doing here? "You work here?" he asked. "Yes. I'm one of the teachers." Brielle tried to pull herself together. "You're looking for daycare?" "For my nephew," he said smoothly. "My sister is moving to the area and asked me to check out some options." It was a plausible story. Brielle had no reason to doubt it. She nodded and gestured for him to follow her. "Let me show you around. I'm Brielle, by the way." "Julian," he replied. "Julian Pierce." The name sounded familiar, but Brielle couldn't place it. She led him through the daycare, showing him the different age group rooms, explaining their curriculum and schedule. Julian asked thoughtful questions and seemed genuinely interested. He was professional, polite, keeping appropriate distance. They passed the 4-year-old classroom, where Hope was building something with blocks. She looked up and saw them through the window. Her face lit up with instant recognition. "That's the nice man," Hope called out, pointing. Several children and both teachers looked up. Brielle felt her face heat with embarrassment. "She has a good memory," Julian said, not seeming bothered at all. "She really does." Brielle moved them along quickly, acutely aware of the curious looks from the other teachers. When they finished the tour, Julian thanked her politely. "This is a wonderful facility. I'll let my sister know." "Great. Here's our information packet." Brielle handed him a folder. "If she has any questions she can call anytime." Julian took the folder and for a moment their fingers brushed. Brielle pulled back quickly, suddenly flustered. "Thank you, Brielle," Julian said. Then he paused. "I hope things have been better for you this week. You seemed like you were having a rough day when we met before." The personal comment surprised her. "Oh, yes, thank you. They're okay." He nodded, like he understood she was lying but wouldn't call her on it. "Take care of yourself. And tell the little girl I said hello." "I will." Brielle watched him leave, confused and oddly disappointed. Why did she feel this way about a stranger? Why did his kindness affect her so much? She shook her head and returned to her classroom, pushing thoughts of Julian Pierce out of her mind. But he came back. 3 days later, Julian arrived during afternoon pickup time with coffee and donuts for the entire staff. "Just wanted to say thank you for the tour," he explained when Brielle, shocked, asked why he'd brought gifts. "You really didn't need to do this," she protested. "I wanted to." His smile was genuine. "You all work so hard. You deserve a little treat." The other teachers were thrilled. Brielle accepted her coffee with gratitude she didn't quite know how to express. Hope saw Julian through the classroom window again and waved enthusiastically. He waved back. "She really likes you," Brielle observed. "The feeling is mutual," Julian replied. "She's got a great smile." After that, Julian started stopping by occasionally. Always with some excuse. He was in the neighborhood, he was bringing supplies his sister didn't need, he wanted to ask follow-up questions. The visits were brief and appropriate, but Brielle found herself looking forward to them. Julian was easy to talk to. He listened when she spoke. He remembered small details about Hope, asking how she liked a book series Brielle had mentioned or if she'd recovered from a cold. It was nice. Having someone show interest. Having someone care even in a casual way. But Brielle didn't let herself hope for anything more. Men like Julian Pierce didn't end up with struggling single mothers. This was just kindness, nothing deeper. She'd accept it gratefully and not wish for things she couldn't have. That was before Hope's car broke down. Before Julian made an offer Brielle initially wanted to refuse. Before everything changed and she had to confront what his kindness really meant, and what it was awakening in both of them. To understand why Hope called Julian Daddy, Brielle needed to explain the father her daughter never knew. She needed to take Julian back to the beginning, before the pain, before the loss, when life had been full of promise and love. Brielle had met Trevor Thompson when she was 21, fresh out of community college with a degree in early childhood education and dreams of opening her own daycare someday. Trevor was 23, working as a mechanic at his uncle's auto shop and saving money to start his own business. They met at a mutual friend's barbecue, and the attraction was instant. Trevor had been handsome in an understated way. Warm brown eyes, an easy smile, strong hands that were always gentle with her. He made her laugh. He made her feel safe. After years of struggling through school while working multiple jobs, Brielle had found someone who saw her, truly saw her, and loved what he found. They dated for a year, taking their time building something solid. Trevor would show up at her apartment with takeout when he knew she'd had a long day. He fixed things around her place. Without being asked. He listened to her dreams and encouraged her to chase them. He was kind, patient, and steady as a rock. When Trevor proposed, Brielle said yes without hesitation. They got married at a small church, surrounded by friends and family. The wedding was simple but beautiful. Brielle wore a white dress from a consignment shop and carried wildflowers. Trevor wore his best suit and cried when he saw her walking down the aisle. "You're my everything," he'd whispered when they said their vows. "I promise I'll always take care of you." And he had. For 3 beautiful years Trevor kept that promise. They rented a small apartment and saved money together. Brielle worked at a daycare, gaining experience and building her resume. Trevor worked long hours at the shop, his reputation for honest, quality work growing. They talked about the future, about buying a house, about having children. When Brielle got pregnant they were over the moon. Trevor painted the nursery himself, a soft yellow because they wanted to be surprised about the baby's gender. He read parenting books and attended every doctor's appointment. He talked to Brielle's growing belly at night, telling their baby about all the things they'd do together. "I can't wait to meet you," Trevor would say, his hand resting on Brielle's stomach. "I'm going to be the best daddy. I'm going to teach you everything I know. I'm going to love you so much." Brielle had felt completely secure in their little family of almost 3. She'd felt blessed. Lucky. Like all the hard years of her childhood and young adulthood had been preparation for this happiness. And then, on a rainy Tuesday night in October, a drunk driver ran a red light. Trevor was coming home from work, just 15 minutes from their apartment. He never saw the other car coming. The impact killed him instantly, the police said. He didn't suffer. As if that was supposed to be a comfort. Brielle got the call at 9:30 at night. She was 7 months pregnant, finishing up the nursery, hanging little outfits in the closet. The officer's voice on the phone had been professional but not unkind. "Mrs. Thompson, there's been an accident. You need to come to County General Hospital." The next hours were a blur of fluorescent lights and sympathetic faces and words that didn't make sense. Dead. Gone. So sorry for your loss. Do you have someone who can stay with you tonight? Brielle remembered standing in the hospital corridor, one hand on her pregnant belly, unable to process what she was being told. Trevor couldn't be dead. He was just at work. He was coming home. They were going to watch a movie and eat popcorn. He was going to feel the baby kick. He couldn't be dead. But he was. And suddenly Brielle's world had shattered into a million pieces. The funeral was a nightmare. Trevor's family blamed the drunk driver, blamed the universe, blamed everyone but found no comfort in their anger. Brielle sat through it all in a daze, her hand never leaving her belly. She wasn't just mourning her husband. She was mourning the father her child would never know. After the funeral, reality set in with brutal efficiency. There was life insurance but not much. There were bills, hospital expenses from the accident, funeral costs. Trevor's business dreams had died with him, taking their savings. Brielle was left with their apartment, a lease she could barely afford and a baby on the way. She tried to work as long as she could, but eventually her pregnancy made it impossible. She went on leave, unpaid, and watched their small savings dwindle. She applied for assistance programs, swallowed her pride, and accepted help she never thought she'd need. Trevor's mother visited once, looked at the nursery, and broke down crying. "He was so excited to be a father," she sobbed. "This isn't fair. It's not fair." No, it wasn't fair. But that didn't change anything. Hope was born on a cold January morning, 3 months after Trevor's death. Brielle labored alone, except for a nurse who held her hand during the hardest contractions. When Hope finally arrived, screaming and beautiful and perfect, Brielle held her daughter and cried for everything Trevor was missing. "Your daddy would have loved you so much," Brielle whispered to the tiny baby in her arms. "He wanted to meet you so badly. I'm so sorry he's not here." The early months were impossibly hard. Brielle was grieving, exhausted, overwhelmed. She was trying to care for a newborn while drowning in postpartum depression and widow's grief. Some days she barely got out of bed. Some days she sat in the nursery Trevor had painted, holding Hope, and cried until there were no tears left. But babies don't wait for you to be ready. They need food and clean diapers and love, even when you feel like you have nothing left to give. So Brielle kept going. She went back to work when Hope was 3 months old, finding a daycare position that let her bring her daughter with her. She worked all day, came home to a lonely apartment, and did it all again the next day. Time passed. Hope grew. Brielle survived, day by day, month by month. She stopped crying every night. She boxed up some of Trevor's things. She learned to say, "my late husband," without her voice breaking. She became functional if not happy. But she never opened her heart to anyone again. How could she? She'd loved Trevor with everything she had, and losing him had nearly destroyed her. She couldn't risk that kind of pain again. So she focused on Hope, on work, on surviving. Love was a luxury she couldn't afford. Hope grew into a bright, cheerful child despite the challenges. She was resilient, adaptable, full of joy. But sometimes Brielle would catch her daughter watching other children with their fathers at the park, her expression wistful. Hope never knew what she was missing, but she felt the absence anyway. "Why don't I have a daddy?" Hope had asked one day shortly after turning 4. Brielle had knelt down and taken her daughter's hands. "You do have a daddy, sweetheart. But he's in heaven. He loved you very much even though he never got to meet you." "What was he like?" "He was kind and strong and funny. He fixed things. He would have taught you how to ride a bike and played with you for hours. He would have loved you more than anything in the world." "I wish he was here," Hope said simply. "Me too, baby. Me too." That conversation haunted Brielle for days. She tried so hard to be enough for Hope, to be both mother and father. But she couldn't fill that void. She couldn't be what her daughter needed, no matter how hard she tried. And then Julian Pierce had walked into their lives. When Brielle looked back at that first meeting outside the coffee shop, she realized Hope had responded to Julian immediately. The way he'd crouched down to her level. The way he'd spoken directly to her, not over her head. The way he treated Mr. Hops with respect, understanding that to a 4-year-old, a stuffed bunny was precious. Hope had been starving for male attention, for a father figure, even if she didn't consciously realize it. And Julian, whether he knew it or not, had given her a taste of what she'd been missing. When Julian started visiting the daycare, Hope's reaction was intense. She'd watch him through the classroom windows. She'd ask Brielle if the nice man was coming today. She'd draw pictures for him, which Brielle would quietly tuck away, not wanting to make things awkward. Brielle had noticed but convinced herself it was harmless. Julian was kind to all the children. He brought treats for everyone. Hope's attachment was just childish affection, nothing serious. It would pass. Except it didn't pass. It grew stronger. Hope started talking about Julian at home, incorporating him into her imaginary games. When they'd read bedtime stories about families, Hope would point to the daddy character and say, "That's like Mr. Julian." Brielle should have been more careful. She should have created boundaries. But she'd been selfish. Julian's visits made her feel less alone. His kindness reminded her that good people existed. His interest, however casual, made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt since Trevor died. So she let it continue. She let Julian visit. She let Hope get attached. She told herself it was fine, even as warning bells rang in the back of her mind. And then came the day Brielle's car wouldn't start. She was supposed to pick up Hope from daycare and head to her evening cleaning job. But her old sedan made a clicking sound and refused to turn over. Brielle tried again and again, near tears. She couldn't afford a tow truck. She couldn't afford repairs. She couldn't miss her cleaning shift because she needed every penny. She called the cleaning company and explained she'd be late. Then she called a coworker to ask about carpooling. While she was standing in the parking lot, defeated and desperate, Julian pulled up. He'd been visiting the daycare again, though Brielle hadn't known he was coming. He saw her standing by her car, phone pressed to her ear, clearly distressed. "Car trouble?" he asked when she hung up. Brielle nodded, not trusting her voice. "Let me take a look." "You don't have to." "I know. But I want to." Julian popped the hood and examined the engine with surprising competence for a man in an expensive suit. After a few minutes he straightened up. It's your battery. Probably the alternator too. This car needs more work than just a jump start. Brielle felt tears threatening. How much would that cost? Julian named a figure that might as well have been $1 million. Brielle closed her eyes, despair washing over her. She couldn't afford it. Not even close. Which meant no car. Which meant she'd lose her cleaning job. Which meant they'd fall even further behind on bills. I can't, she whispered. I just can't. Brielle, look at me. She opened her eyes and found Julian watching her with an expression that was difficult to read. Let me help, he said quietly. Let me get your car fixed. Please. I can't accept that. It's too much. It's nothing to me, Julian said, and it wasn't said arrogantly, just honestly. I can afford it easily. And you need your car. You need to get to work to take care of Hope. Please let me do this. Brielle wanted to refuse. Pride demanded she refuse. But she thought about Hope, about keeping a roof over her daughter's head, about the consequences of saying no. I'll pay you back, she said finally. Somehow. I don't know how long it will take, but I'll pay you back. If it makes you feel better, sure. But there's no rush. No interest. No pressure. Julian pulled out his phone. I'll have it towed to a shop I know. They're honest and they'll do good work. I'll let them know to send me the bill. Why? Brielle asked suddenly. Why are you doing this? Julian was quiet for a long moment. Because you need help and I can give it. Because that little girl in there deserves a mother who isn't drowning in stress. Because... He stopped, seemed to reconsider his words. Because it's the right thing to do. There was something else in his eyes, something he wasn't saying. But Brielle was too overwhelmed to analyze it. She just nodded, accepting his help because she had no other choice. Julian arranged everything. He even drove Brielle and Hope to her cleaning job, then came back to pick them up afterward. During the ride, Hope chattered away in the back seat, telling Julian about her day, showing him a picture she'd drawn. That's me and you and Mommy, Hope explained, pointing to stick figures in the drawing. Brielle's breath caught, but Julian just smiled. That's beautiful, Hope. I'm honored to be in your picture. Hope beamed, and Brielle saw her daughter's entire face light up with joy at his approval. That was the moment Brielle realized she'd made a terrible mistake. She'd let this go too far. Hope wasn't just attached to Julian. She was bonding with him in a way that was going to break her heart when he inevitably stopped coming around. Because why would a billionaire CEO continue visiting a daycare to see them? This would end and Hope would be hurt, and it would be Brielle's fault for letting it happen. But by then it was too late. The pattern was set. Julian kept coming around. He kept helping. And Hope kept falling more in love with the kind man who paid attention to her. The man she was starting to see as the father she'd never had. 3 days after Julian fixed Brielle's car, he showed up at Little Sunshine Daycare with a proposal that would change everything. Brielle was in the middle of story time, reading to a circle of attentive 4-year-olds, when the director pulled her aside. Julian Pierce is here to see you, Mrs. Patterson said, her eyebrows raised meaningfully. In my office. Brielle's heart lurched. Had something happened? Was there a problem with the car repairs? She handed the book to her assistant teacher and hurried to the office, anxiety building with each step. Julian stood when she entered, looking as polished as always in a gray suit that probably cost more than Brielle made in 3 months. But his expression was warm, not concerning. I hope I'm not interrupting, he said. No, it's fine. Is everything okay? Everything's great. I actually wanted to talk to you about something. Julian glanced at Mrs. Patterson, who took the hint and stepped out, closing the door behind her. Now Brielle was really nervous. She stayed standing, her hands clasped in front of her. Your car is ready, Julian said. But the repairs cost more than expected. The alternator was shot, and they found some other issues that needed attention for safety. I had them fix everything. How much? Brielle asked, dreading the answer. Julian named a sum that made her knees weak. She calculated quickly in her head. At her current rate of pay, accounting for all her bills, it would take her over a year to pay him back. Maybe longer. I know that's a lot, Julian said quickly, seeing her distress. But I don't need the money back. I told you this is a gift. I can't accept that much as a gift. That's ridiculous. I barely know you. Then let's change that. Julian took a step closer, his blue eyes intense. Let me explain something, Brielle. I'm not trying to create an obligation. I'm not expecting anything in return. I saw someone who needed help, someone who works hard and takes care of her child and deserves a break. So I help. That's all this is. But why? Brielle's voice came out as a whisper. Why do you care about us? Julian was silent for a long moment, considering his answer carefully. Do you know what I do for a living? You're a CEO of some kind. A tech company. Pierce Technologies. We develop software and AI systems. He smiled slightly. I'm very good at what I do. I've made a lot of money. More than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. And you know what I've learned? Money means nothing if you don't use it to make a difference. I'm sure there are charities. I donate to plenty of charities, Julian interrupted gently. But sometimes you meet someone and you just know they need help. You see someone struggling who shouldn't have to struggle. Someone who's good and kind and deserving of better circumstances. That's you, Brielle. That's you and Hope. Brielle felt tears burning in her eyes. You don't know me well enough to say that. Maybe not. But I know enough. I've watched you with those kids. You're patient and loving even when you're clearly exhausted. I've seen how you prioritize Hope's needs over your own. I've seen you keep going when most people would have given up. Julian's voice softened. I've seen your strength, Brielle, and I want to help. Please let me. The tears spilled over. Brielle turned away, trying to compose herself. She never cried at work. She never let anyone see her break down. But Julian's kindness was overwhelming in a way she didn't know how to handle. I don't understand, she managed to say. People don't just do things like this. There's always a catch. No catch. I promise. Then what do you want from me? Nothing. Julian paused. Or maybe, if I'm being completely honest, I want to see you smile more. I want to see that worry line between your eyebrows disappear. I want Hope to keep drawing pictures with all of us in them because she's happy. Brielle turned back to face him, searching his expression for any sign of deception or ulterior motives. But all she saw was sincerity. I don't know how to accept this, she admitted. I don't know how to just take something so big without giving anything back. You already give so much, Julian said. To your daughter, to these kids you teach, to everyone around you. Maybe it's time someone gave something to you. The words broke something inside Brielle, and she had to sit down before her legs gave out. Julian immediately pulled over a chair for himself, sitting at her level, giving her space but staying close. I lost my husband 2 years ago, Brielle said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. Trevor. He died 3 months before Hope was born. And I've been trying so hard to be enough for her, to give her a good life, to not let her see how much I'm struggling. But I'm drowning, Julian. I'm so tired and I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. Then stop trying to do it alone, Julian said quietly. Let me help. Not just with the car. With other things. Whatever you need. That's too much to ask. You're not asking. I'm offering. Julian leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his expression earnest. Brielle, I have resources. I have connections. I have money I don't need. And I have time. Let me use all of that to make your life easier. Please. But why? The question came out as a whisper. You barely know us. Why would you do this? Julian hesitated, and Brielle saw him choosing his words carefully. Because when I see you and Hope, I see people who deserve better than what life has given you. And because... He paused, something vulnerable flashing across his face. Because helping you makes me feel like my success means something. Like all the money and power I've accumulated can actually do some good in the world instead of just sitting in accounts. There was more to it than that, Brielle sensed. Something personal that Julian wasn't ready to share. But she didn't push. She just sat there, trying to process everything, trying to decide what to do. Okay, she finally said. Okay, I'll accept your help with the car. But that's it. No more after this. I can't keep taking things from you. Julian smiled, and Brielle got the feeling he'd won some kind of victory. Deal. For now. I mean it. I know you do. Julian stood and offered his hand to help Brielle up. When she took it, his grip was warm and steady. Your car is at the shop waiting for you. I'll drive you there whenever you're ready. Thank you, Brielle said, the words inadequate for everything she felt. Truly thank you. You're welcome. That evening, Julian drove Brielle to pick up her car. Hope came along, chattering excitedly about a project they'd done at daycare. Julian listened attentively, asking questions and laughing at Hope's animated responses. Brielle watched them interact in the rearview mirror, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. Hope was completely comfortable with Julian, leaning forward in her car seat to tell him stories, showing him her newest drawings. And Julian, this powerful CEO who commanded boardrooms and made million-dollar decisions, was giving a 4-year-old girl his complete attention like she was the most important person in the world. When they arrived at the shop, Brielle's car looked better than it had in months. Julian had authorized a full detailing along with the mechanical repairs. It was clean inside and out, running smoothly like a different vehicle entirely. "You didn't have to do all this," Brielle protested, looking at the gleaming exterior. "I wanted you to be safe," Julian replied simply. "You and Hope deserve a reliable car." Hope was bouncing on her toes, excited about the new car. She hugged Julian's leg tightly before climbing into her car seat. "Thank you, Mr. Julian," she said. "You're the best." "You're very welcome, Hope." They said their goodbyes and Brielle drove away, watching Julian grow smaller in her rearview mirror. Hope chattered happily about the car, about Julian, about how nice it was to have help. And Brielle felt the walls around her heart beginning to crack. She'd been so careful for 2 years to not let anyone in, to not need anyone, to handle everything herself. But Julian was making that impossible. His kindness was relentless and she was starting to realize she liked having him around. More than liked it. She looked forward to his visits. She thought about him when he wasn't there. She noticed the way Hope's whole face lit up when she saw him. This was dangerous territory. Brielle knew it logically. But emotionally, she was already losing the battle to keep her distance. 2 weeks later, Julian stopped by the daycare with another proposal. "I'd like to sponsor a field trip for the children," he said to Mrs. Patterson and Brielle in the office. "The aquarium has educational programs perfect for this age group. I'll cover all costs, transportation, admission, everything. The kids would benefit from the experience." Mrs. Patterson looked like she might faint with joy. Field trips were expensive, and the daycare rarely had the budget for them. "That's incredibly generous, Mr. Pierce." "Are you sure?" "Absolutely sure. I've already contacted the aquarium and they're holding a date for us. All I need is your approval." They spent the next hour working out details. Julian was thorough and organized, making sure every child would be safe and cared for during the trip. Parents would be invited to attend as chaperones. The aquarium would provide lunch. Everything was arranged perfectly. After Mrs. Patterson left to start calling parents, Brielle confronted Julian alone in the hallway. "This is too much," she said quietly. The car was one thing. But sponsoring an entire field trip. "Why is it too much?" Julian countered. "I have the money. The kids will have a wonderful time." "What's wrong with that?" "You're doing this for Hope." "I'm doing this for all the children," Julian corrected. "Hope will benefit, yes. But so will 20 other kids who might not otherwise get to experience something like this. Isn't that worth it?" Brielle couldn't argue with that logic much as she wanted to. She sighed. "You make it very hard to say no." "Good." Julian's smile was warm. "Because I don't like hearing you say no. You're impossible. I've been told that before." The field trip was scheduled for 3 weeks later. In the meantime, Julian continued his regular visits to the daycare. He read stories to the children during circle time. He helped with art projects, not caring that he got paint on his expensive clothes. He learned all the kids' names and remembered details about their interests and personalities. Hope followed him everywhere during these visits. She held his hand, sat in his lap during story time, showed him everything she made. And Julian never brushed her off or acted bothered. He gave her his complete attention, made her feel special, treated her like she mattered. Brielle watched it all with a growing sense of unease and something else she didn't want to name. Julian was becoming part of their lives in a way she'd never intended. He was filling a role she'd thought would stay empty forever. And Hope was attaching to him with an intensity that worried Brielle deeply. But what could she do? Tell Hope to stay away from the kind man who brought them joy? Push away the only help she'd had in 2 years? Refuse the generosity that was making their lives so much better? She couldn't. And maybe, secretly, she didn't want to. So she let it continue, even as warning bells rang louder in her mind. She let Julian into their lives, into Hope's heart, inch by careful inch. She accepted his help with gratitude, just as he'd asked her to. And she tried not to think about what would happen when this all inevitably ended. Because men like Julian Pierce didn't stay in lives like theirs. That was reality. And Brielle had learned the hard way that reality was often cruel. "I need to pause and ask you something important. Have you ever received unexpected kindness that changed your perspective on life? If this story is resonating with you, if you're curious about how Brielle and Julian's journey unfolds, please hit that subscribe button. Comment below and tell me about a time someone helped you when you needed it most. Your stories matter, and your engagement helps this channel share more stories of hope and healing. The day of the aquarium field trip arrived bright and clear. Hope had been counting down the days, her excitement building until she could barely sleep the night before. She wore her favorite green dress and insisted on bringing Mr. Hops even though Brielle tried to explain the bunny might get lost. Mr. Julian likes Mr. Hops, Hope insisted. And Mr. Hops wants to see the fish. There was no arguing with 4-year-old logic, so Mr. Hops came along. The bus Julian had arranged was comfortable and clean, with seat belts for every child. Parents and teachers loaded the excited kids aboard, everyone chattering about what they'd see at the aquarium. Julian arrived just before departure, dressed more casually than usual in dark jeans and a blue button-down shirt. "Room for one more?" he asked with a grin. The kids erupted in cheers. Hope bounced in her seat, waving frantically. "Mr. Julian can sit with us." And that's how Brielle ended up sitting on a bus next to Julian Pierce, with Hope between them, heading to the aquarium. It felt surreal. It felt domestic. It felt dangerous and wonderful and terrifying all at once. During the ride, Julian entertained the nearby children with stories about his travels to different oceans around the world. He described seeing dolphins in Hawaii, exploring coral reefs in Australia, watching sea turtles in the Caribbean. The kids hung on his every word. "Have you seen a real shark?" one boy asked, eyes wide. "I have," Julian confirmed. "I went cage diving with great whites off the coast of South Africa." "Weren't you scared?" Hope asked. Julian looked down at her, his expression gentle. "A little. But sometimes the best experiences come when we're brave enough to try new things, even when they're a bit scary." Hope nodded solemnly, processing this wisdom. Then she grabbed Julian's hand and held it tight. "I'm glad you're here with us." "Me too," Julian said softly, squeezing her hand back. Brielle looked away, blinking back unexpected tears. This was exactly what she'd been afraid of. Hope was falling in love with Julian, seeing him as the father figure she'd always wanted. And when he eventually moved on with his life, Hope's heart was going to break. But looking at her daughter's happy face, Brielle couldn't find it in herself to stop it. Hope deserved these moments of joy. She deserved to feel special and cared for. Even if it was temporary, wasn't it worth it? The aquarium was magnificent. The children raced from exhibit to exhibit, pressing their faces against glass to see sharks and rays and colorful tropical fish. Julian stayed close to Brielle and Hope, carrying Hope on his shoulders when she got tired, pointing out interesting creatures, reading information placards aloud. At the touch tank, Julian rolled up his sleeves and helped Hope pet a starfish. He showed her how to be gentle, how to respect the animals. Hope giggled when she touched a sea anemone and it tickled her finger. "This is the best day ever," Hope declared, her eyes shining. "I'm so glad you're having fun," Julian replied. "Thank you for bringing us here," Hope said, suddenly serious. She threw her arms around Julian's neck and hugged him tight. "You're so nice to me and Mommy." Brielle saw Julian's expression shift, becoming almost emotional. He hugged Hope back carefully like she was something precious. "You're very welcome, sweetheart," he said, his voice rough. They moved through the exhibits, and Brielle found herself relaxing despite her worries. This was a good day. A happy day. She couldn't remember the last time they'd done something like this, something fun and carefree. She'd been so focused on survival that she'd forgotten about living. During lunch in the aquarium's cafeteria, the children ate and chattered excitedly about everything they'd seen. Hope sat between Brielle and Julian, picking at her chicken fingers while telling them about all her favorite exhibits. "I liked the jellyfish best," she announced. "They were so pretty and floaty." "They were beautiful," Brielle agreed. "Maybe one day we could go to the ocean and see jellyfish in real life," Julian suggested. Hope's eyes went wide. "Could we really? I don't see why not. If your mom says it's okay." Both Hope and Julian looked at Brielle expectantly. She felt cornered, but in a strangely pleasant way. "Maybe someday," she said carefully. "We'll see." "That means yes," Hope whispered loudly to Julian, making him laugh. After lunch they visited the gift shop. Julian bought each child a small souvenir, despite protests from several parents that he'd already done too much. Hope chose a stuffed jellyfish that matched the one she'd loved in the exhibit. On the bus ride home, Hope fell asleep against Julian's shoulder, exhausted from the exciting day. Julian didn't move, didn't disturb her, just let her sleep. He looked down at the little girl resting against him with an expression that made Brielle's chest tight. "She's really something special," Julian said quietly. "She is," Brielle agreed. "She's my whole world." "I can see that. You're a wonderful mother." "I'm trying." "It's not always enough." "It's more than enough." Julian met her eyes. "Brielle, I hope you know how remarkable you are. Raising Hope alone, working multiple jobs, staying positive and kind despite everything you've been through. That's extraordinary. Brielle didn't know what to say. Compliments made her uncomfortable. She didn't feel extraordinary. She felt tired and overwhelmed and like she was barely keeping her head above water. I'm just doing what I have to do, she finally said. No. You're doing it with grace and love. There's a difference. They fell quiet, the bus rumbling along the highway. Hope slept on, completely trusting and peaceful. Brielle looked at her daughter and felt a surge of protective love so intense it was almost painful. She would do anything for Hope. Absolutely anything. Even if it meant accepting help from Julian. Even if it meant risking her heart again. Even if it meant possibly getting hurt when this fairy tale inevitably ended. Because for now, in this moment, Hope was happy. And that was worth any risk. The week following the aquarium trip, something shifted. Julian's visits to the daycare became more frequent, almost daily. He'd stop by in the late afternoon, often bringing treats for the children or supplies the daycare needed. He'd stay for an hour or two helping with activities, reading stories, playing games with the kids. Hope's attachment to him grew stronger with each visit. She'd wait by the window during afternoon free play watching for his car. When he arrived, she'd run to greet him, throwing herself into his arms with absolute trust. Julian always caught her, always swung her around, always made her feel like she was the reason he'd come. Brielle watched this developing bond with mixed feelings. On one hand, seeing Hope so happy filled her with joy. Her daughter laughed more, smiled bigger, seemed lighter than she had in months. On the other hand, Brielle worried constantly about what would happen when Julian's interest waned. Because surely it would. This level of involvement wasn't sustainable for a busy CEO with a massive company to run. But Julian showed no signs of pulling back. If anything, he became more involved. 3 weeks after the aquarium trip, Julian approached Brielle with another idea. I'd like to take you and Hope to dinner, he said during one of his visits. Nothing fancy, just a nice meal together. What do you say? Brielle's first instinct was to refuse. Dinner felt like a date and she wasn't ready for that. But Hope, who'd overheard the conversation, was already bouncing with excitement. Please, Mommy? Can we go? Please? Looking at her daughter's hopeful face, Brielle couldn't say no. Okay. Dinner sounds nice. Perfect. Saturday evening? I'll pick you both up around 6. Saturday arrived too quickly. Brielle spent an embarrassing amount of time trying to figure out what to wear. Her wardrobe was limited, mostly work clothes and casual items. She finally settled on a maroon dress she'd bought years ago but rarely wore. It was simple but flattering and the color made her feel confident. Hope insisted on wearing her green dress from the aquarium trip. It's my lucky dress, she explained solemnly. Good things happen when I wear it. Julian arrived promptly at 6, looking handsome in black slacks and a charcoal sweater. He held flowers, a beautiful bouquet of mixed blooms that made Brielle's breath catch. These are for you, he said, offering them to Brielle. Then he pulled out a single daisy from behind his back. And this is for Hope. Hope's delighted squeal could probably be heard down the hall. She took the flower carefully, holding it like treasure. Thank you, Mr. Julian. You both look beautiful, Julian said, his eyes lingering on Brielle in a way that made her feel warm all over. Dinner was at a family-friendly Italian restaurant with checkered tablecloths and soft lighting. It wasn't overly formal, which put Brielle at ease. They ordered pasta and garlic bread, and Hope was thrilled when Julian let her help him twirl spaghetti on her fork. The conversation flowed easily. Julian asked Hope about her favorite things, listening intently to her rambling answers about unicorns and art projects and her best friend at daycare. He asked Brielle about her work, about her dreams, about what she'd wanted to be when she was younger. I wanted to open my own daycare, Brielle admitted. A really good one where every child felt valued and loved. Where parents didn't have to worry about quality of care. That's a beautiful dream, Julian said. What stopped you? Life, Brielle said simply. Trevor's death, the bills, just surviving day to day. Dreams are expensive and I can't afford them right now. Maybe not right now, Julian agreed. But someday. Dreams don't have expiration dates. The comment stayed with Brielle through the rest of dinner. When was the last time she'd let herself dream? When had survival become her only goal? After dinner they went for ice cream at a nearby shop. Hope got chocolate with rainbow sprinkles, Brielle chose vanilla with caramel, and Julian got mint chocolate chip. They walked through a nearby park, Hope skipping ahead while Brielle and Julian followed at a slower pace. Thank you for tonight, Brielle said. You didn't have to do this. I wanted to, Julian replied. I enjoy spending time with you both. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why are you really doing all this? Brielle stopped walking, turning to face him. The car, the field trip, dinner tonight. What do you want from us? Julian was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer. When he spoke, his voice was careful but honest. I'm 38 years old, he began. I've spent the last 15 years building my company, making money, chasing success. I've accomplished everything I set out to do professionally. But somewhere along the way I realized I was lonely. I had colleagues and employees and board members, but no real connections. No family of my own. No one who cared about me as a person rather than as a CEO. He paused, looking out at Hope, who was examining flowers near the path. Then I met you too, Julian continued. And I saw something I'd been missing. Genuine warmth. Real joy. A chance to be part of something meaningful. When Hope smiles at me, it's not because I'm rich or powerful. It's because I was kind to her. That's all it took. Just basic kindness. He looked at Brielle directly. I want to be part of your lives because being around you both makes me feel human again. Makes me feel like life is about more than quarterly reports and stock prices. Brielle's throat felt tight. That's a lot of pressure to put on us. I'm not asking for anything you're not comfortable giving, Julian assured her. I'm not trying to replace Hope's father or push myself into your life in ways you don't want. I just want to be here. To help. To spend time with you both. That's all. What happens when you get tired of playing house? The question came out sharper than Brielle intended. When the novelty wears off and you remember you have a whole other life that doesn't include a struggling single mom and her kid? That's not going to happen. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Julian's voice was firm. Brielle, I'm not some bored rich guy looking for a distraction. I'm a man who's found something real and precious, and I'm not going to walk away from it. You can't promise that. Then let me prove it, Julian said simply. Let me keep showing up. Let me keep being there for you and Hope. Give me a chance to demonstrate that I mean what I say. Brielle wanted to argue, wanted to protect herself with skepticism and distance. But Hope was calling to them, showing them a butterfly she'd found, and the moment shifted. They walked back to Hope, admired the butterfly and continued through the park. Julian bought Hope a balloon from a vendor, and she floated along between them, holding both their hands, chattering happily about her day. It felt like a family. That was the dangerous truth Brielle couldn't ignore. The three of them together felt natural, right, like pieces fitting together perfectly. And that terrified her because families could be torn apart. Love could be lost. Hearts could be broken. She'd learned that lesson once already. She didn't want to learn it again. Over the following weeks, Julian became a regular presence in their lives outside the daycare. He'd invite them to parks on weekends. He'd bring over takeout on weeknights when Brielle was too tired to cook. He helped Hope learn to ride a bike without training wheels, running alongside her in the park while Brielle watched, her heart in her throat at both the physical risk and the emotional one. Hope blossomed under the attention. She became more confident, more outgoing, happier. She talked about Julian constantly. She drew pictures of the three of them together. She started incorporating Julian into her bedtime prayers. Thank you for Mommy and thank you for Mr. Julian who is so nice to us. Brielle tried to maintain boundaries, tried to keep some emotional distance. But it was getting harder. Julian was thoughtful and patient. He never pushed for more than she was ready to give. He respected her space while making it clear he wanted to be closer. He made her laugh. He made her feel seen and valued. He made her remember what it felt like to have a partner, someone to share burdens with, someone who cared about her well-being. One evening, Julian arrived with groceries and announced he was making dinner for them. You don't have to cook for us, Brielle protested. I know, but I want to. Besides, you've been working all day. Let someone take care of you for once. Brielle couldn't argue with that, so she sat at their small kitchen table and watched Julian cook. He was surprisingly competent in the kitchen, chopping vegetables and seasoning chicken with practiced efficiency. Hope helped by sitting on the counter and handing him ingredients, her legs swinging happily. They looked natural together, comfortable. Like they'd done this 1,000 times before. Where did you learn to cook? Brielle asked. My mother, Julian replied. She insisted all her children know their way around a kitchen. Said it was a life skill that transcended gender roles. He smiled at the memory. Some of my best childhood memories are of cooking with her. Do you see her often? Not as often as I should. She lives in Seattle with my stepfather. I call her every week though. What does she think about you spending so much time at a daycare? Julian laughed. She thinks it's the best thing I've done in years. She's been telling me for a decade that I work too much and need to find what really matters in life. When I mentioned you and Hope, she got very quiet and then said, Don't mess this up, Julian. This sounds important. Brielle's heart skipped. You told your mother about us? Of course. You're a big part of my life now. Why wouldn't I tell her? The casual way he said it, like it was obvious, made Brielle's chest tight. Julian wasn't treating this like a temporary situation. He was integrating them into his life in real, meaningful ways. Dinner was delicious. Hope ate 2 full plates, which never happened. They talked and laughed, and it felt so normal, so right, that Brielle had to excuse herself to the bathroom just to cry quietly for a minute. This was what she'd lost when Trevor died. This feeling of being part of a family, of having someone to share meals and moments with, of not being alone in the trenches of parenting. She'd thought she'd never have it again. But here it was, offered by a man who'd stumbled into their lives by accident. Could she trust it? Could she risk believing it was real? After dinner, Julian helped with dishes while Hope played in the living room. He and Brielle stood side by side at the sink, their hands occasionally brushing in the soapy water. The simple domestic intimacy of it was almost overwhelming. Brielle, Julian said quietly, I need you to know something. What? This isn't a game for me. I'm not playing at being in your lives. Every moment I spend with you and Hope, I'm all in. Completely committed. Brielle's hands stilled in the water. Julian, I know you're scared. I know you've been hurt before and you're worried about Hope getting attached. But I need you to hear me. I'm not going anywhere. I want to be part of your family. However you'll let me. That's a big statement. I mean every word. Brielle turned to look at him, searching his face for any sign of doubt or hesitation. She found none. Just sincerity and something deeper, something that looked like hope and longing and determination all mixed together. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I don't know how to let someone in again. Then we'll figure it out together, Julian said. No pressure, no rush. Just honesty and time. Before Brielle could respond, Hope appeared in the doorway. Mr. Julian, will you read me a bedtime story? I'd love to, Julian said immediately. They all went to Hope's small bedroom, where Julian sat on the edge of her bed and read from her favorite book about a brave little girl who goes on adventures. Hope listened raptly, occasionally asking questions or pointing at the pictures. When the story ended, she yawned widely. Time for bed, sweet girl, Brielle said, tucking the covers around her daughter. Wait, Hope said. She looked at Julian seriously. Mr. Julian, can I ask you something? Of course. Will you come back tomorrow? If your mom says it's okay, I'd like that very much. Mommy? Hope looked at Brielle with pleading eyes. Brielle looked at Julian, at Hope, at the scene before her. This was the moment of decision. She could keep resisting, keep trying to maintain distance. Or she could acknowledge what was already happening and let herself hope. Yes, she said softly. Mr. Julian can come back tomorrow. Hope smiled, satisfied. Julian squeezed her hand and then stood, following Brielle out of the room. At the apartment door he paused. Thank you, he said. For letting me in. For trusting me even a little bit. I'm still scared, Brielle admitted. That's okay. Being scared means you're risking something that matters. Julian touched her cheek gently, just for a moment. Good night, Brielle. Good night. After he left, Brielle leaned against the closed door, her heart racing. She was falling. Despite all her precautions, despite all her fears, she was falling for Julian Pierce. And worse, she was letting herself hope that maybe, just maybe, this time love wouldn't end in loss. But in the back of her mind, a small voice warned her. Nothing good lasts forever. Especially not for people like her. The field trip to the aquarium 2 months after that first dinner marked a turning point that Brielle hadn't seen coming. Julian had arranged another outing, this time a larger one for the entire daycare. Parents were invited, making it a family event. The excitement among the children was palpable for days beforehand. Hope, now spending time with Julian several times a week, talked about nothing else. She'd made a list of all the sea creatures she wanted to see, practiced drawing fish, and insisted on wearing her green dress again for good luck. Mr. Julian promised to show me the big shark tank, she told Brielle for the 100th time. He said they have ones that are as long as a car. That sounds exciting, baby. Will he sit with us on the bus again? I don't know, sweetheart. There will be lots of families there. But when the day arrived, Julian found them immediately. He'd rented 2 luxury buses this time to accommodate all the families, and he personally helped load children and parents aboard, learning names and chatting easily with everyone. He sat with Brielle and Hope again, and several other parents joined them in nearby seats. Julian was charming and friendly, answering questions about his company and his motivation for sponsoring these outings. "These kids deserve enriching experiences," he explained to one mother. "Education isn't just about classrooms. It's about exposure to new things, building curiosity, creating memories." The mother nodded approvingly, and Brielle noticed several parents looking at Julian with admiration and perhaps a bit of curiosity about his relationship with her and Hope. She'd become aware that people were talking, wondering why a billionaire was so invested in their small daycare, specifically in spending time with one of the teachers and her daughter. At the aquarium, the group scattered to explore different exhibits. Julian had arranged for private tour guides who led smaller groups through the various sections, explaining the marine life in age-appropriate language that captivated the children. Hope stayed glued to Julian's side, holding his hand as they moved from tank to tank. She asked countless questions which Julian answered patiently. Other children gravitated toward them, and Julian treated each one with the same attention and kindness he showed Hope. About halfway through the visit, the group stopped at the touch tank. Children crowded around, eager to feel the starfish and sea cucumbers. Hope was in the front, leaning over the edge, reaching for a particularly colorful starfish. "Mr. Julian, help me reach it," she called. Julian moved closer, guiding her hand. Another child bumped into Hope from behind, and she lost her balance, tumbling forward. Julian caught her instantly, pulling her back from the water. "Whoa, I've got you," he said, setting her safely on her feet. Hope clutched his shirt, slightly shaken. "Thank you. You're okay. I won't let anything happen to you." Several parents witnessed the moment, and Brielle saw them exchange looks. The way Julian had reacted, so protective and immediate, looked exactly like a father protecting his child. The observation made Brielle's stomach flip. They continued through the exhibits, stopping for lunch in the aquarium's restaurant. The children ate enthusiastically, their earlier fears forgotten as they recounted their favorite parts of the visit. After lunch, their guide led them to the dolphin show. The amphitheater was packed, but Julian had reserved an entire section for their group. Hope sat between Brielle and Julian, her eyes wide with anticipation. The show was spectacular. Dolphins leaped and spun, trainers explained their intelligence and social behavior, and the children were mesmerized. During one segment, a dolphin came close to the edge of the pool, right in front of their section. Hope leaned forward, enchanted. "He's looking at me," she whispered in wonder. "He is," Julian agreed. "He knows you're special." Hope beamed at that, and Brielle felt her heart squeeze. These moments of pure childhood joy were what she'd been missing from their lives, what she hadn't been able to provide on her own. Julian was giving Hope experiences and happiness that went beyond material things. He was giving her attention, presence, and genuine care. After the dolphin show, the guide announced they'd be splitting into smaller groups for the final exhibits. Some children wanted to see the jellyfish again, others the sea turtles, and some wanted to visit the gift shop. Brielle and several other parents opted for the jellyfish exhibit. Hope wanted to go too, so they joined that group. Julian came along, though Brielle noticed he'd been texting someone periodically throughout the day. Probably work matters that couldn't wait. The jellyfish exhibit was in a separate building, reached by crossing a beautiful outdoor courtyard filled with fountains and sculptures. The children ran ahead, excited and loud, while the adults followed at a more sedate pace. Brielle was talking with another mother about Hope's progress at daycare when she realized she didn't see her daughter. She scanned the crowd of children ahead and didn't spot the green dress. "Where's Hope?" she asked Julian, a note of panic creeping into her voice. Julian looked around, his expression immediately serious. "She was just here." They both started walking faster, calling Hope's name. The other parents noticed and began helping to look. The children in their group all accounted for themselves, but Hope was missing. Brielle's heart began to race. The aquarium was huge, with multiple buildings and thousands of visitors. Hope could be anywhere. She could have wandered off, gotten confused about which group to follow, or... "I'll check the courtyard," Julian said, already moving. "You check back toward the restaurant. Everyone else, spread out but stay in pairs." Brielle ran back the way they'd come, calling Hope's name, checking behind benches and sculptures, looking in bathrooms. Nothing. 5 minutes passed, feeling like hours. Other parents were calling too, and aquarium staff had been alerted. Where was her daughter? Where was her baby? Brielle was on the verge of panic when she heard Julian's voice calling from the courtyard. She ran toward it, her heart hammering. She found them by a large fountain. Hope was wrapped in Julian's arms, crying, her face buried in his shoulder. Julian was kneeling, holding her tight, murmuring soothing words. "Hope." Brielle rushed over and dropped to her knees beside them. "Baby, are you okay?" "Mommy." Hope reached for Brielle with one arm but kept the other locked around Julian's neck. I got lost. I was so scared. I know, sweetheart. I know. It's okay now. You're safe. I couldn't find you, Hope sobbed. Everyone was gone and I didn't know where to go. But you found her, Brielle said to Julian, her voice shaking with relief and residual fear. I heard her crying, Julian explained. She was by the fountain trying to find her way back. Hope lifted her tear-stained face and looked at Julian with complete trust and adoration. You found me. I'll always find you, Julian promised. You're safe now. And then it happened. The moment that changed everything. Thank you, Daddy, Hope whispered, pressing her face back into Julian's shoulder. The word hung in the air like a bomb. Brielle froze. Julian froze. Several parents who'd gathered nearby froze. Brielle felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. Her daughter had just called Julian Daddy. Her 4-year-old, who'd never had a father, who'd been taught that her daddy was in heaven, had just given that title to a man they'd known for only a few months. Julian's eyes met Brielle's over Hope's head. She saw shock there and something else. Tenderness? Longing? She couldn't read it through her own emotional turmoil. Hope, sweetie, Brielle said carefully, touching her daughter's back. That's Mr. Julian. But Hope didn't correct herself. She just held on to Julian tighter, still sniffling from her scare. The other parents were whispering now. Brielle felt their gazes, their judgment or curiosity or whatever it was. She felt exposed and embarrassed and confused about what to do. Julian slowly stood, lifting Hope with him. She wrapped her legs around his waist, clinging like a koala bear, refusing to let go. Let's get everyone back together, Julian said quietly to Brielle. We can talk about this later. But there was no later where this didn't matter. Hope had just publicly claimed Julian as her father. Whether she understood the full implications or not, she'd said the word. She'd made her feelings clear to everyone present. The rest of the visit passed in a blur. Brielle couldn't focus on anything except the looks from other parents and the way Hope refused to leave Julian's side. She held his hand, leaned against him, sought his comfort over everyone else's, including Brielle's at times. On the bus ride home, Hope fell asleep in Julian's lap again. Several parents made small talk about the day, carefully not mentioning the daddy incident, but Brielle knew they were all thinking about it. One mother, Mrs. Henderson, sat down next to Brielle. That was sweet how Julian found Hope, she said. He's clearly very attached to her. He's been kind to us, Brielle said carefully. More than kind, I'd say. Mrs. Henderson smiled knowingly. Your daughter obviously adores him. And unless I'm reading things completely wrong, he feels the same way about both of you. It's complicated. The best things usually are. Mrs. Henderson patted Brielle's hand. For what it's worth, I think it's wonderful. Hope deserves a good father figure, and Julian seems like a genuinely decent man. Don't let fear keep you from happiness. The advice was well-meaning but didn't make Brielle feel better. She wasn't just afraid of her own happiness being disrupted. She was terrified of Hope getting hurt. What happened when Julian realized playing family was more complicated than he'd thought? What happened when his interest moved elsewhere? Hope would be devastated. When they arrived back at the daycare, parents collected their belongings and children. Hope woke up groggy and disoriented, immediately reaching for Julian again. I'll drive you home, Julian offered. Brielle wanted to refuse, wanted space to process everything, but Hope was clingy and tired, and the thought of wrangling her onto the bus was too much. So she nodded and let Julian drive them home. The car ride was quiet. Hope dozed in her car seat and neither adult spoke. The tension was thick enough to cut. At Brielle's apartment, Julian carried the sleeping Hope inside and laid her gently on her bed. Brielle removed her shoes and covered her with a blanket. Then she and Julian stepped into the living room, closing Hope's bedroom door behind them. We need to talk about what happened, Julian said. I know. They stood facing each other, the small living room feeling even smaller with the weight of what needed to be discussed. She called you Daddy, Brielle said, her voice tight. In front of everyone. I know. I didn't know how to respond. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Brielle wrapped her arms around herself. She's getting too attached. She's creating this fantasy where you're her father, and when reality hits, it's going to break her heart. What if it's not a fantasy? Julian asked quietly. Brielle's breath caught. What? What if I want to be her father? What if I want to be part of this family for real? You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. Julian took a step closer. Brielle, I've fallen in love with that little girl in there. And I'm falling in love with you. This isn't temporary for me. This isn't some whim or experiment. I want to be in your lives permanently. Brielle felt tears burning her eyes. You can't just decide that. Being a parent isn't something you try on for size. I'm not trying it on. I'm all in. Completely committed. For how long? Brielle's voice broke. Until it gets hard? Until you realize that parenting is exhausting and thankless and endless? Until you get tired of playing house and remember you have a whole life that doesn't include us. That's not going to happen. You don't know that. Brielle's control finally snapped and tears spilled over. You don't know anything about real parenting. About the sleepless nights and the fears and the constant worry that you're screwing everything up. You don't know what it's like to be solely responsible for another human being's entire existence. Then teach me, Julian said simply. Let me learn. Let me be there for the hard parts, not just the fun moments. Why? Why would you want this? You could have anyone, anything. Why would you choose this struggle? Julian closed the distance between them and gently took her shoulders. Because when Hope called me daddy today, my heart felt like it would explode. Because when you smile at me, I feel like I can breathe properly for the first time in years. Because this struggle you're talking about is the most meaningful thing I've ever been part of. His voice softened. Because I love you, Brielle. I love both of you. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving it. The words hung in the air between them. Brielle stared at Julian through her tears, searching his face for any sign that he didn't mean it. She found none. I'm terrified, she whispered. I know. That's okay. If Hope gets hurt, I won't hurt her. I swear to you, Brielle, I will never abandon her. Or you. Brielle wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to so badly. But trust was hard when you'd already lost everything once. I need time, she finally said. I need to think about all of this. Julian nodded, understanding. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. He left shortly after, and Brielle sank onto her couch, emotionally exhausted. Hope had called Julian Daddy. Julian had said he loved them. Everything was moving so fast, spinning out of control, and Brielle didn't know how to stop it or if she even wanted to. She looked at the closed door to Hope's bedroom, where her daughter slept peacefully, dreaming of jellyfish and dolphins and a man she'd claimed as her father. What do I do? Brielle whispered to the empty room. How do I protect her heart? How do I protect mine? There were no answers. Just silence and the weight of impossible decisions. I'll continue with the remaining chapters in the next response to stay within length limits. Would you like me to continue now? Chapter 7, The Uncomfortable Truth. Back in Julian's office, 3 weeks after the aquarium incident, Brielle sat with her hands trembling as she prepared to finish explaining the truth. After Hope called you daddy that day, Brielle continued, her voice steady despite her nerves, I tried to correct her. Every single time she said it, I'd gently remind her that you were Mr. Julian. But she'd just look at me with those big eyes and say, but he takes care of us like a daddy does. Julian leaned forward, his expression intent. What did you tell her? I told her that you were a very special friend. That you cared about us. But that calling someone daddy was a big deal, and she needed to be sure that's what she wanted. Brielle wiped at her eyes. She said she was sure. She said you made her feel safe and loved, just like daddies are supposed to do. And what did you say to that? Brielle took a shaky breath. I didn't know what to say. Because she was right. You do all the things a father does. You show up. You care. You're patient and kind and present. You're everything Trevor would have been if he'd lived. Julian's jaw tightened with emotion. Brielle? Let me finish, she said quickly. I need you to understand the whole truth. After that day at the aquarium, other parents started asking questions. Some were kind about it, saying how nice it was that Hope had a positive male influence. Others were more judgmental, wondering about my relationship with you, speculating about whether I was using Hope to trap a rich man. That's ridiculous. Is it? Brielle met his eyes directly. From the outside it looks exactly like that. Single mother, struggling financially, latches onto a billionaire and lets her daughter call him daddy to create a bond. It looks calculated. But it's not. I know you, Brielle. You've fought me every step of the way. You've tried to refuse every bit of help. I know that. You know that. But everyone else sees what they want to see. Brielle stood up, needing to move. She walked to the window, looking out at the city below. The gossip got bad enough that Mrs. Patterson called me into her office. She asked me directly about our relationship. She needed to know if there was something inappropriate happening. Julian stood too, anger flashing in his eyes. That's insulting. It's her job to protect the children in her care. including Hope. Brielle turned back to face him. I told her the truth. That you'd been kind to us. That you'd helped with my car and sponsored field trips. That I hadn't encouraged Hope's attachment to you, but I hadn't stopped it either because it made her so happy. What did she say? She said she believed me. But she also said that if Hope continued to publicly call you daddy, it would create problems. Other parents were uncomfortable. They didn't understand the situation. And without a clear definition of what you were to us, she couldn't defend it. Julian moved closer to Brielle, his presence both comforting and overwhelming. So that's why you've been distant the past few weeks. Why you've asked me not to visit as often. I was trying to protect Hope. And myself. Brielle's voice broke. I was trying to create boundaries that should have existed from the beginning. Because the truth is, Julian, I let this happen. I let my daughter fall in love with you. I let myself fall in love with you. And I have no idea what to do about it. The confession hung in the air between them. Julian's expression shifted through several emotions at once. Surprise, tenderness, hope. You love me? He asked softly. Brielle laughed, but it came out more like a sob. Of course I love you. How could I not? You're everything good in this world. You're kind and generous and patient. You treat my daughter like she's precious. You've made our lives so much better just by being in them. Then why have you been pushing me away? Because loving you is terrifying. Brielle wrapped her arms around herself. Because I already lost one person I loved and I barely survived it. Because if I let you all the way in, if I let Hope believe you're really her father and then you leave, it will destroy her. It will destroy us both. Julian closed the remaining distance between them, taking her gently by the shoulders. I'm not going to leave. You keep saying that. Because it's true. Brielle, look at me. When she did, his blue eyes were blazing with intensity. I love you. I love Hope. I want to be her father in every way that matters. I want to be your partner, your support, your family. I want all of it permanently. How can you be sure? Because I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Julian's hands moved to cup her face. The past few months with you and Hope have been the happiest I've ever been. Every day I spend with you both, I become more convinced that this is what I've been missing. This is what life is supposed to be about. Brielle felt fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. You say that now. But what about in a year? 5 years? 10 years? What happens when the reality of raising a child gets hard? When Hope is a difficult teenager? When the shine wears off and you're left with the mundane, exhausting reality of family life? Then we'll handle it together, Julian said simply. Brielle, I'm not naive. I know that being a parent is challenging. I know there will be hard days and exhaustion and times when we want to pull our hair out. But I also know that I want to experience all of it with you. The good, the bad, and everything in between. Why? The question came out as a whisper. Why us? Why commit to this when you could have anything? Julian was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Do you want to know the real reason I came to the daycare that first time? Why I lied about having a nephew? Yes. Because when I saw you and Hope outside that coffee shop, I saw something I'd been searching for my entire adult life without realizing it. I saw real love. Genuine connection. A mother who would do anything for her child. A little girl with the most honest smile I'd ever seen. And I wanted to be part of that. I wanted to know what it felt like to be loved like that. He took a breath, his voice thick with emotion. My whole life, people have loved me for what I could give them. Business partners loved my ideas. Employees loved my salary. Women I dated loved my money and status. But you and Hope loved me just for being kind. Just for showing up. That's all it took. Julian's thumbs brushed away Brielle's tears. When Hope called me daddy, I felt something click into place. Like I'd finally found where I belonged. And I'm not giving that up. I'm not giving you up. Not ever. Brielle's resistance crumbled. She'd been fighting so hard to protect herself, to protect Hope, but maybe protection wasn't what they needed. Maybe they needed to be brave enough to accept love when it was offered. I'm still scared, she admitted. That's okay. We can be scared together. What if I'm not enough? What if you realize you want someone more successful, more accomplished, more? Stop. Julian cut her off gently. You're everything I want. Everything I need. You're smart and strong and beautiful. You're an incredible mother. You make me want to be a better man. Don't you see? You're not less than enough. You're more than I ever hoped to find. Brielle let herself lean into him, let herself accept the comfort of his embrace. For the first time in 3 weeks, she felt the tight knot of anxiety in her chest begin to loosen. Hope keeps asking why you don't come over anymore, she said quietly. She thinks she did something wrong. She thinks calling you daddy made you leave. Julian pulled back to look at her, pain etched on his features. I never wanted her to think that. I stayed away because you asked me to, but I hated every minute of it. I know. I hated it too. Then let me come back. Let me be part of your lives properly. No more distance, no more protection. Just us being a family. It's not that simple. There are logistics, boundaries, expectations. I don't even know what you're proposing. Then let me be clear. Julian took both her hands in his. I want you and Hope to move into my house. I have more space than I know what to do with, and you're struggling in that tiny apartment. I want to help with expenses so you're not working yourself to exhaustion. I want to be there for breakfast and dinner and bedtime stories. I want to teach Hope to ride a bike and help her with homework and show up to every school event. Julian, that's too much. It's not enough, he countered. I want to court you properly. Take you on dates. Show you how special you are. And when you're ready, when you feel secure in what we have, I want to marry you. I want to legally adopt Hope and be her father in every sense of the word. Brielle's heart was hammering so hard she could barely breathe. You're talking about marriage. Adoption. That's permanent. Exactly. That's the point. I want permanent, Brielle. I want forever. We've only known each other a few months. I don't need more time to know what I want. But if you do, that's fine. We can take it as slow as you need. The offer stands regardless. Move in with me. Let me take care of you both. Give us a real chance. Brielle's mind was spinning. Everything she'd wanted, everything she'd been afraid to hope for, was being offered to her freely. A home. Security. Well, a father for Hope. A partner for herself. But could she really accept it? Could she trust that this wasn't going to fall apart? She thought about Hope, about how her daughter lit up every time she saw Julian. About how she'd drawn picture after picture of the three of them as a family. About how she'd asked every single night when Mr. Julian was coming back. She thought about herself, about how empty the past 3 weeks had felt without Julian's presence. About how much she'd missed his laugh, his kindness, the way he made everything seem manageable. She thought about Trevor, about the love she'd lost. But also about the love she'd found. Trevor would want her to be happy. He would want Hope to have a father. He wouldn't want them to spend their lives alone out of loyalty to his memory. Okay, she whispered. Julian's eyes widened. Okay. Okay, we'll move in with you. We'll try this. Brielle's voice grew stronger. But I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me that if you ever change your mind, if you ever realize this isn't what you want, you'll tell me immediately. Don't stay out of guilt or obligation. Because Hope's heart is involved now, and I can't let her get hurt worse by drawing this out. I promise. But it's a promise I'll never have to keep because I'm never changing my mind. Julian pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. Thank you. Thank you for trusting me. I won't let you down. I hope not. Because if you do, I'll never forgive myself for taking this risk. You won't have to forgive yourself. Because this is going to work. We're going to work. Julian kissed her then, soft and gentle and full of promise. It was Brielle's first kiss since Trevor, and it felt like coming home and starting an adventure all at once. When they broke apart, Julian was smiling. Can I come home with you tonight? To tell Hope together? Yes. She's going to lose her mind with excitement. Good. I've missed her so much. They left his office hand in hand, and Brielle felt like she was walking into a new life. A better life. One filled with love and support and the family she'd thought she'd lost forever. Hope was going to have a father. A real one who chose them, who wanted them, who loved them unconditionally. And Brielle was going to have a partner. Someone to share the burden with, someone to celebrate the victories with, someone to build a future with. It was terrifying and wonderful and more than she'd ever dared to hope for. But as they drove to pick up Hope from daycare, Brielle let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, happy endings were real. Even for people like her. Hope was playing blocks in the daycare's aftercare program when Brielle and Julian walked in together. The moment she saw them, her entire face transformed. She dropped the blocks and ran across the room, launching herself at Julian with a squeal of pure joy. You came back. Hope wrapped her arms around his neck, squeezing tight. I missed you so much. I missed you too, sweetheart, Julian said, his voice thick with emotion. He held her close, one hand cradling the back of her head. I'm so sorry I stayed away. It's okay now. You're here. Hope pulled back to look at him seriously. Are you going to stay? For real? Yes, for real. Julian glanced at Brielle, who nodded encouragingly. In fact, your mom and I need to talk to you about something important. Can we go somewhere quiet? Mrs. Patterson, who'd been watching the reunion with a knowing smile, offered her office. The three of them settled in, Hope sitting on Julian's lap while Brielle took the chair beside them. Hope, you know how you've been asking about Mr. Julian? Brielle began. You said he was busy with work. I did. But that wasn't the whole truth. The real reason he hasn't been coming around is because I asked him to give us space. I was worried about you getting too attached to him. Hope's face fell. Because I called him Daddy? Yes, baby. Because of that. Brielle reached over to take her daughter's hand. But I was wrong to worry. Mr. Julian wants to talk to you about it. Julian shifted Hope slightly so he could look at her properly. Hope, when you called me Daddy at the aquarium, do you remember that? Hope nodded solemnly. I remember. Mommy said I shouldn't call you that. Your mom was trying to protect your heart. She didn't want you to get hurt if I left. But here's the thing, Hope. I don't want to leave. I want to be in your life forever. And if you want to call me Daddy, I would be honored. Because I love you very much. Hope's eyes went wide. Really? Really? I love you and I love your mommy. And I want us to be a family. A real family. Like in my drawings? Exactly like in your drawings. Hope looked at Brielle for confirmation. Is it true, Mommy? Can Mr. Julian be my daddy? Brielle felt tears sliding down her cheeks, but they were happy tears this time. Yes, sweet girl. If that's what you want, then yes. Hope threw her arms around Julian's neck again, this time crying happy tears of her own. I want that so much. I've always wanted a daddy. Julian held her, his own eyes suspiciously bright. Over Hope's head, he met Brielle's gaze, and the love she saw there took her breath away. This was real. This was happening. They were becoming a family. After a few minutes, Hope calmed down enough to ask questions. So what do I call you now? Mr. Julian or Daddy? Whatever feels right to you, Julian said. You can call me Julian or Daddy or Dad. Whatever makes you comfortable. Daddy, Hope decided immediately. I want to call you Daddy. Then Daddy it is. And you're going to stay with us now? Julian looked at Brielle. Actually, we were hoping you and your mom would come stay with me. I have a big house with lots of room. You could have your own bedroom much bigger than the one you have now. And there's a backyard where we could play. Hope's excitement was palpable. A backyard? Could we get a swing set? Absolutely. We'll get whatever you want. Can we go see it? Right now? Julian laughed. If your mom says it's okay. Brielle smiled through her tears. Let's go see your new home, baby. They collected Hope's things and drove to Julian's house in his car. Hope chattered the entire way, asking questions faster than they could answer them. What color could she paint her room? Could she have a pet? Would there be other kids in the neighborhood to play with? Julian's house was in an exclusive neighborhood about 20 minutes from the daycare. When they pulled through the gates and up the long driveway, Brielle's breath caught. She'd known Julian was wealthy, but seeing his home made it real in a way that was almost overwhelming. The house was beautiful, a modern design with lots of windows and clean lines. It wasn't ostentatious or showy, but it was clearly expensive and impeccably maintained. It's too big for one person, Julian admitted as he parked. I bought it thinking I'd eventually have a family. I just didn't know when that would happen. It's beautiful, Brielle managed to say. Wait until you see inside. The interior was even more impressive. Hardwood floors, high ceilings, a kitchen that looked like something from a magazine. Everything was tasteful and elegant but also somehow warm and welcoming. Julian led them upstairs to show Hope her potential bedroom. It was enormous, at least 3 times the size of her current room. It had big windows overlooking the backyard, a walk-in closet and an attached bathroom. This whole room would be mine? Hope asked in wonder. All yours. You can decorate it however you want. Hope ran around the room, examining everything, her excitement boundless. She declared she wanted her walls painted blue like the ocean and her ceiling painted with stars. We can make that happen, Julian promised. While Hope explored, Julian took Brielle to see the master suite. It was on the opposite end of the hall, giving everyone privacy. The room was spacious with a sitting area, a fireplace, and a bathroom that made Brielle want to weep with joy. A soaking tub, a walk-in shower, double sinks, all gleaming and perfect. This would be yours, Julian said. Your space. I'll take one of the guest rooms for now. I meant what I said about courting you properly. No pressure, no expectations. Just time to build what we have. You're really serious about this? Completely. Julian took her hands. Brielle, I want you to feel safe here. Comfortable. This is your home now. Yours and Hope's. Whatever you need to make it feel that way, just tell me. I don't even know where to start. Then we'll figure it out together. One day at a time. They rejoined Hope, who was already planning her room down to the last detail. Julian listened patiently to every idea, promising they'd go shopping for furniture and decorations over the weekend. There's one more thing I want to show you both, Julian said. He led them downstairs and out to the backyard. The yard was huge, with mature trees providing shade, a stone patio with comfortable outdoor furniture, and plenty of open space for playing. But what caught Hope's attention was the small playground set near the back fence. It had swings, a slide, monkey bars, and a fort area. I had that installed this week, Julian admitted. I was hoping you'd say yes. That you'd agree to move in. Hope was already running toward the playground, calling back to them to watch her. Brielle stood there, taking it all in, trying to process the enormity of what was happening. You planned this, she said to Julian. You've been planning it. I knew what I wanted. I just had to wait for you to be ready. What if I hadn't been ready? What if I'd said no? Then I would have kept waiting. However long it took. Julian wrapped his arms around her from behind, and they watched Hope play together. I told you, Brielle. I'm all in. This is forever for me. I still can't quite believe this is real. Believe it? This is your life now. Our life. They spent the rest of the evening exploring the house and discussing logistics. Brielle would need to give notice at her apartment. They'd have to move her and Hope's belongings, though Julian pointed out there wasn't much worth moving beyond personal items. He wanted to buy new furniture, clothes, whatever they needed to feel settled. I don't want you to worry about money ever again, Julian said firmly when Brielle protested. I have more than enough. Let me take care of you both. Please. I still want to work, Brielle insisted. I love teaching. I'm not going to be a kept woman. I wouldn't ask you to give up your work, but maybe you could cut back to just one job instead of two? Or consider going back to school to get additional certifications. Whatever you want. I just don't want you exhausted all the time. It was reasonable. It was generous. It was everything Brielle needed to hear. That night, after they'd returned to Brielle's apartment and put Hope to bed, Brielle and Julian sat on the couch together, talking about the future. I want to do this right, Julian said. I want to give you time to adjust, to feel secure. But I also want you to know my intentions. I'm going to marry you, Brielle. I'm going to adopt Hope. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making you both happy. You're very confident. I'm very certain. Julian pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. I bought this 2 weeks ago. I've been carrying it around, waiting for the right moment. Brielle's heart stopped. Julian? I'm not proposing tonight, he said quickly. It's too soon. You need time to settle in, to feel secure in what we're building. But I want you to know this ring exists. I want you to know that I'm serious about forever. He opened the box, revealing a beautiful diamond ring. It was elegant and timeless, not flashy but clearly expensive. The kind of ring meant to last a lifetime. When you're ready, Julian continued, closing the box and setting it on the coffee table between them, when you feel comfortable and sure, I'm going to ask you properly. And I'm going to hope with everything in me that you say yes. Brielle picked up the box, opening it again to look at the ring. It was perfect. Everything about this was perfect. Terrifyingly, wonderfully perfect. I don't deserve this, she whispered. You deserve everything. Julian took her face in his hands. You deserve love and support and a partner who cherishes you. You deserve happiness and security and someone who will never make you doubt that you're valued. I want to be that person for you. You already are, Brielle realized. You've been that person since the day we met. Then let me keep being that person. Forever. They kissed again, and this time it was deeper, full of promise and hope and the beginning of something beautiful. When they finally broke apart, Brielle felt like she was glowing from the inside out. Thank you, she said softly. For not giving up on us. For being patient. For loving my daughter like she's yours. She is mine, Julian said simply. Maybe not biologically, but in every way that matters. The moment she called me daddy, she became mine. And I became hers. They talked for hours that night, planning their future, discussing Hope's needs, dreaming about what their life together would look like. By the time Julian finally left, promising to return in the morning to start the moving process, Brielle felt like she was living in a dream. But it wasn't a dream. It was real. This was her new life. Her second chance at happiness. And she was going to grab it with both hands and never let go. The move happened quickly. Within a week, Brielle and Hope had packed up their small apartment and transported everything to Julian's house. As predicted, there wasn't much worth keeping. Brielle's furniture was worn and old, so they donated most of it. Hope's toys and clothes came along, as did Brielle's personal items and the few precious photos she had of Trevor. Julian helped with everything, never complaining about the work or the chaos. He carried boxes, assembled furniture, and entertained Hope when she got bored with the process. He was patient and helpful, and exactly what Brielle needed. On their first night in the new house, Hope couldn't sleep from excitement. She kept getting out of bed to explore her room, touch her new things, look out her window at the backyard below. Finally, Julian suggested they all camp out in the living room together, at least for the first night. They made a nest of blankets and pillows on the floor. Hope snuggled between Brielle and Julian, Mr. Hops clutched tight in her arms. "This is the best day ever," Hope declared for the 10th time that evening. "I'm glad you're happy, sweetheart," Brielle said, smoothing her daughter's curls. "Are you happy, Mommy?" "Yes, baby. I'm very happy." "What about you, Daddy?" Hope looked up at Julian. "Are you happy?" Julian's eyes met Brielle's over Hope's head. "I'm happier than I've ever been in my life." Hope smiled, satisfied. "Good. Because we're a family now. Families are supposed to be happy together." Simple wisdom from a 4-year-old. They were a family now. And yes, families were supposed to be happy together. The first few weeks in the house were an adjustment. Brielle kept expecting to wake up and find it was all a dream, that she was still in her tiny apartment struggling to make ends meet. But every morning she woke up in a comfortable bed in a beautiful room, and the dream stayed real. Julian kept his promise about courting her properly. He took her on dates, just the two of them, while his mother flew in from Seattle to babysit Hope. They went to nice restaurants, movies, walks through the park. He brought her flowers for no reason. He left notes for her to find around the house, telling her how beautiful she was, how much he appreciated her, how lucky he felt. He was romantic and attentive and patient. He never pushed for more than Brielle was ready to give, content to let their relationship develop naturally. With Hope, Julian was everything a father should be. He took her to her first day of pre-kindergarten and fought tears when she bravely walked into the classroom. He read her bedtime stories every night, never missing even one. He taught her to ride a bike in the driveway, running alongside her and cheering when she finally got it. He showed up to every daycare event, every parent-teacher conference, every small milestone. He was present and engaged and genuinely interested in Hope's life. Watching him with her daughter, Brielle's last reservations melted away. This was real. Julian loved them. He wasn't going anywhere. About 2 months after they moved in, Brielle came home from work to find the backyard transformed. Julian had hired contractors to install a vegetable garden, complete with raised beds and a small greenhouse. He'd remembered an offhand comment Brielle had made about wanting to teach Hope where food comes from. "I thought we could garden together," Julian explained, showing her around. "The three of us. Make it a family project." Brielle burst into tears, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. Julian held her while she cried happy tears, and Hope danced around them, excited about growing tomatoes and strawberries. That evening, after Hope was in bed, Julian found Brielle in the garden, touching the soil in the beds, marveling at this gift. "Thank you," she said when he joined her. "For all of this. For everything." "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do. You've changed our lives completely. You've given us security and happiness and love. I never thought I'd have this again. You deserve it. Both of you." Julian took her hand. "Brielle, I know we said we'd take things slow. That I'd wait until you were ready. But I have to ask, are you ready? Ready for what? Ready to believe this is permanent. Ready to trust that I'm not going anywhere. Ready to marry me?" Brielle's breath caught. She looked at Julian, at this incredible man who'd walked into her life and transformed it completely. She thought about the past few months, about how he'd kept every promise, exceeded every expectation, loved them both with unwavering devotion. She thought about Hope, who called him daddy naturally now, who ran to him with every scraped knee and exciting discovery, who drew pictures of their family and hung them on the refrigerator with pride. She thought about herself, about how the constant anxiety that had defined her life for 2 years had finally eased. How she slept through the night now. How she laughed more. How she'd started dreaming again about the future instead of just surviving the present. "Yes," she said. "I'm ready." Julian's face transformed with joy. "Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I believe this is permanent. Yes, I trust you with my heart and Hope's heart. Yes to all of it." Julian pulled the ring box from his pocket. Apparently he'd been carrying it around just waiting for this moment. He dropped to one knee right there in the garden, under the stars, and opened the box. Brielle Thompson, you and Hope are the best things that have ever happened to me. I love you both more than I thought it was possible to love another person. Will you marry me? Will you let me be Hope's father officially? Will you build a life with me? Yes, Brielle said through happy tears. Yes to everything. Julian slipped the ring on her finger and it fit perfectly. He stood and kissed her, and it was the kiss of two people who'd found their way home to each other. We should tell Hope, Brielle said when they broke apart. Now. It's past midnight. She'll want to know. She'll be so excited. They crept upstairs to Hope's room, where she was sleeping peacefully, surrounded by stuffed animals and her precious Mr. Hops. Julian gently woke her. Hope, sweetheart, wake up. We have something to tell you. Hope's eyes fluttered open, confused. Daddy? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything is perfect. Julian sat on the edge of her bed while Brielle sat on the other side. I asked your mommy to marry me and she said yes. We're going to be an official family. Hope sat up, suddenly wide awake. Really? You're getting married? Really? Brielle confirmed, showing her the ring. Hope threw her arms around both of them, squealing with joy. This is the best thing ever. Can I be in the wedding? Can I wear a pretty dress? Can I help plan it? They laughed at her excitement, promising she could do all those things. Hope chattered for another 20 minutes, too excited to go back to sleep, before finally settling down. I love you, Mommy, she said, hugging Brielle tight. I love you, Daddy, she added, hugging Julian just as tight. We're going to be the best family ever. We already are, Julian said softly. The wedding was planned for 6 months later. Julian wanted to give Brielle time to plan the day of her dreams without rushing. But more importantly, he wanted to make sure Hope felt included in every aspect. They let Hope help choose the venue, a beautiful garden with an outdoor ceremony space. They let her pick out her flower girl dress, a stunning green gown that made her look like a little princess. They included her in cake tastings and flower selections and every other decision. Julian also began the legal process of adopting Hope. It required paperwork and court appearances and home studies, but Julian handled everything with the same efficiency he brought to his business. He wanted it finalized before the wedding, wanted to walk down the aisle as Hope's legal father. During this time, Brielle quit her evening cleaning job, just as Julian had suggested. She kept her daycare position because she loved it, but having evenings free to spend with her family was transformative. They had family dinners every night. They played games. They watched movies together. They were building traditions and memories. Julian scaled back his work hours too, delegating more to his management team. His priorities had shifted. Yes, his company mattered, but his family mattered more. Brielle watched him transform from a workaholic CEO into a devoted father and partner. He attended story time at Hope's school. He volunteered for field trip chaperone duty. He coached her beginning soccer team even though he'd never played soccer in his life. He showed up, again and again, proving his love through actions and not just words. One evening, about 4 months before the wedding, Julian came home with news. The adoption is approved, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Hope is legally my daughter now. Brielle threw her arms around him, crying happy tears. They told Hope together, and she was thrilled even though she didn't fully understand the legal implications. All she knew was that Daddy was officially her daddy now, forever. That weekend, they went to the courthouse for the final hearing. Hope wore her favorite blue dress and held Julian's hand the entire time. When the judge asked Hope if she wanted Julian to be her father, she said yes in the loudest, clearest voice possible. He's already my daddy, Hope explained to the judge seriously. This just makes it official on paper. The judge smiled. Then it's my honor to make it official. Mr. Pierce, congratulations. You are now legally Hope Thompson's father. Julian broke down crying, and Brielle wasn't far behind. They'd come so far from that chance meeting outside a coffee shop. They built something real and lasting and beautiful. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, Brielle found herself reflecting on her journey. From widow barely surviving to struggling single mother, to loved woman with a complete family. It felt like a miracle. She thought about Trevor sometimes, talking to him in her heart. She thanked him for the time they'd had together, for giving her hope, for showing her what love looked like. And she felt, somehow, that he was happy for her. That he'd want this for them. I'll always love you, she told Trevor's memory. But I love Julian too. And that's okay. I'm allowed to have both in different ways. I'm allowed to be happy. She visited Trevor's grave one last time before the wedding, bringing Hope along. Hi, Daddy Trevor, Hope said, placing flowers on the headstone. Mommy says you're in heaven watching over us. I want you to know I have another daddy now. His name is Julian and he's really nice. But you're still my daddy too. Mommy says I can have 2 daddies, one in heaven and one on earth. Is that okay? Brielle wiped tears from her eyes. I think Daddy Trevor would be very happy that you have someone to love and care for you. They sat by the grave for a while, and Brielle felt a sense of peace wash over her. She was honoring Trevor's memory while also embracing her future. Both things could be true at once. The night before the wedding, Julian insisted on sleeping in the guest room to maintain tradition. Hope thought this was silly. You already live with us, Daddy. Everyone knows you're getting married. But tradition is important, Julian explained. And tomorrow when I see your mom walking down the aisle, I want it to feel special and new. Brielle appreciated the gesture. That night, she lay in bed unable to sleep, her mind racing with excitement and joy and gratitude. Tomorrow she was getting married. Tomorrow she was becoming Mrs. Pierce. Tomorrow their family would be complete in every possible way. She was ready. More than ready. She was excited to start this new chapter, to spend the rest of her life with Julian, to raise Hope together in love and security. Life had knocked her down hard 2 years ago. But she'd gotten back up. She'd survived. And now she was thriving. Tomorrow was going to be the best day of her life. The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful, the kind of perfect spring morning that felt designed specifically for celebrations. Brielle woke early, butterflies dancing in her stomach, and immediately checked on Hope. Her daughter was still sleeping, peaceful and content, unaware that today would change everything officially. Julian's mother, Patricia, arrived at 8 to help with preparations. She'd flown in from Seattle a week earlier and had been a godsend, helping with last-minute details and bonding with Hope. She was warm and kind, delighted that her son had found love and become a father. You look beautiful, Patricia said when Brielle emerged from the shower, her hair wrapped in a towel. Julian is a lucky man. I'm the lucky one, Brielle corrected. He's given us everything. You've given him everything too, Patricia countered. Before you, Julian was successful but empty. You and Hope filled spaces in him I didn't even know were empty. You made him whole. The words touched Brielle deeply. She hugged Patricia, grateful for this woman who'd raised such an incredible son. Hope woke up full of excitement, bouncing around her room and declaring this the best day ever. Brielle helped her into her green flower girl dress, then put on her own gown. The dress was beautiful, a flowing blue design that made Brielle feel like a princess. It wasn't white because this was her second wedding, but the blue felt right. Hopeful. Fresh. Like the clear sky on a perfect day. The ceremony was at 4 in the afternoon in the garden venue they'd chosen. Rows of white chairs faced a beautiful arbor covered in flowers. About 50 people were invited, close friends and family only. Brielle's parents had flown in from across the country, thrilled that their daughter had found love again. Julian's siblings and their families were there too, along with colleagues from the daycare and a few of Julian's closest business associates. Mrs. Patterson sat in the front row, beaming with pride. She'd been right all along that Julian and Brielle were meant for each other. As the ceremony time approached, Brielle felt remarkably calm. No cold feet, no second thoughts. Just certainty and joy. Hope walked down the aisle first, scattering flower petals with theatrical flair. She took her role very seriously, making sure each petal landed perfectly. The guests chuckled at her concentration. Then the music changed and it was Brielle's turn. She walked alone, confident and happy, her eyes locked on Julian waiting at the altar. He looked devastatingly handsome in his dark suit, his expression overwhelmed with love. When she reached him, he took her hands and whispered, "You're absolutely stunning." "You're not so bad yourself," she whispered back with a smile. The ceremony was simple but meaningful. They'd written their own vows, wanting to speak from the heart. Julian went first. "Brielle, 6 months ago I was a man who had everything and nothing. I had success and money and accomplishments, but I was lonely and incomplete. Then I met you in Hope and everything changed. You taught me what really matters in life. You showed me what real love looks like. You gave me the family I'd been searching for without knowing it." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise to love you every day of my life. I promise to be the partner you deserve, the father Hope deserves. I promise to show up, to support you, to cherish you both. I promise to make our family my priority above everything else. I promise to love you not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. Forever." Brielle had to wipe tears from her eyes before she could speak her vows. "Julian, you came into our lives like a miracle. When I'd given up on happiness, when I thought I'd spend the rest of my life alone, you appeared and changed everything. You loved us when we were at our lowest. You saw value in us when we couldn't see it in ourselves. You gave us security and hope and a future. Her voice wavered but stayed strong. I promise to love you with everything I have. I promise to trust you with my heart and Hope's heart. I promise to be your partner in all things. I promise to build a life with you filled with joy and love and family. I promise to never take for granted the gift you've given us. Forever. The officiant smiled at them both. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Julian pulled Brielle close and kissed her deeply while the guests applauded. When they broke apart, Hope rushed forward. My turn, she demanded. Julian scooped her up, and the three of them hugged together, a family united officially and forever. During the reception, Julian made a special announcement. He called Hope to join him at the microphone. Hope, you've been calling me Daddy for a while now, Julian said, kneeling beside her so they were at eye level. And I'm officially your father now. But I wanted to ask you something important in front of everyone. He pulled out a small jewelry box and opened it, revealing a delicate necklace with a heart pendant. Hope Thompson Pierce, will you do me the honor of being my daughter forever? Will you let me be your daddy for the rest of our lives? Hope's eyes filled with tears, understanding the magnitude of the moment despite her young age. Yes, she said loudly. You're my daddy forever. Julian fastened the necklace around her neck, and the entire reception erupted in applause. There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. The rest of the evening was filled with laughter, dancing, and celebration. Brielle danced with her new husband, with her father, and with Hope. Julian gave a speech thanking everyone for celebrating with them, his voice breaking when he talked about how unexpected and precious this love was. As the sun set and lights twinkled in the trees, Brielle stood with Julian watching Hope dance with her new cousins. Can you believe we're here? She asked softly. That this is our life now? I believe it because I fought for it, Julian replied, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Because we both fought for it. Because love won. Love won, Brielle repeated, liking the sound of that. And kindness. And hope. All the important things. They stood there together, watching their daughter laugh and play, surrounded by family and friends, living in a moment that felt too good to be true but was absolutely wonderfully real. 3 years later, Brielle stood in the same garden where they'd gotten married, watching Hope play with her little brother. Trevor Julian Pierce, named for both the fathers in Hope's life, was 18 months old and toddling around on chubby legs while Hope patiently showed him flowers. Brielle was 6 months pregnant with their second child together, a daughter they planned to name Grace. Julian's mother was visiting again, delighting in her grandchildren, and life felt full in the best possible way. Julian walked up behind Brielle and wrapped his arms around her, resting his hands on her belly. Happy anniversary, Mrs. Pierce. Happy anniversary, Mr. Pierce. Do you ever think about that day outside the coffee shop? When Hope dropped Mr. Hops. All the time. Best accident that ever happened to us. Not an accident, Julian corrected. Fate. Meant to be. Hope ran over to them, Trevor toddling behind her. She was 8 now, confident and happy, thriving in school and in life. Mommy, Daddy, can we have a picnic for lunch? She asked. That sounds perfect, sweetheart, Brielle agreed. As they spread out blankets in the garden and unpacked lunch, Brielle reflected on their journey. From struggling single mother to happy wife and mother of 3. From widow who'd given up on love to woman who'd found it twice. From barely surviving to absolutely thriving. Julian had kept every promise. He'd loved them unconditionally. He'd shown up every single day. He'd proven that second chances were real and that families could be built, not just born. Hope had grown into a well-adjusted, loved child who had 2 fathers, one in heaven and one on earth, and she honored both. She still talked about Trevor sometimes, asking questions about him, and Brielle answered honestly and lovingly. Life wasn't always perfect. They had challenges and hard days like any family. But they faced everything together, united in love and commitment. That evening, after the children were in bed, Brielle and Julian sat on their patio watching the stars. Do you have any regrets? Julian asked. Not a single one. You. Only that I didn't find you sooner. But then Hope might not have been mine, so maybe everything happened exactly when it was supposed to. I think it did. I think we all found each other at exactly the right moment. Julian pulled her close. I love you, Brielle. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for giving us a chance. Thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for seeing value in a broken single mother and her lonely little girl. You were never broken. Just bent. And I didn't fix you. You fixed yourself. I just had the privilege of being there while you healed. They sat in comfortable silence, Two people who'd found their way home to each other through kindness, hope, and love. The three things that had guided them from the beginning and would continue to guide them forever. Hope's question from years ago echoed in Brielle's mind. Why does your daughter call me Daddy? The answer had been simple then and remains simple now. Because you loved us when we needed it most. Because you showed up. Because you chose us, every single day. Because you're her daddy in every way that matters. And that, Brielle thought as she rested her head on her husband's shoulder, was the greatest gift anyone had ever given them. The gift of being chosen, of being loved, of being family. Forever.